Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, American Comics. Becoming a Dimension Mephista will cause trouble. Chapter 1. Shen Ziwu is a man with a rare surname but an ordinary life. He meets all the conditions for a time traveler. His parents are absent, he lives alone, and he likes to learn more. So, naturally, he found himself traveling through time. Now that it's come, let's make peace with it. A great opportunity has fallen on me, so I can no longer do nothing. Although he said this, Shen Ziwu was still in an extremely dangerous situation at this moment. Nothingness. Here is nothingness, a place of non-existence, a carrier of concepts. Nothing, no up, down, left, right, front, back, center, no time and space. Since God has nothing to do with human beings, he is a tangible thing with self-will, so he naturally endows nothingness with the concept of being. Before he came here, nothingness was nothingness and did not exist. After he arrived, his own location was the center, his head was up, his feet were down, his face was in front, his back was in back, his arms were divided to left and right, his location was space, and his thoughts were changing in time. The void is broken. However, as the first creature welcomed by the void, he had a close connection with the void, and Shen Ziwu naturally understood his current situation. When he traveled through time, he naturally became the Lord of Nothingness, the concept Mephista. Judging from the knowledge that God has no self, he is the Mephista who was born with the great way of nothingness. However, his Mephista is constantly being eroded by nothingness because his originally human body cannot bear the supremacy of Mephista. Visible to the naked eye, Shen Ziwu can see that his body is constantly disintegrating. The most painful thing is that because of the original power brought by Mephista, Shen Ziwu has mastered countless abilities that he once thought he only had in fantasy. Under the powerful perception, Shen Ziwu can clearly feel that his soul is also being manipulated. The nothingness continues to encroach. This is not a problem of nothingness. As the Lord of Nothingness, he must have a body equal to that of nothingness. Only in this way can he achieve the supremacy of the Lord of Nothingness while preserving himself. Therefore, normally speaking, this is a gift to God from nothing, and it is also the sublimation of his own metamorphosis. It's just that God has no foundation, and the gap between him and the concept of Mephista is even greater than the gap between a single cell and a human being. Therefore, he couldn't bear this kind of gift, and in the end he could only be eroded and assimilated by nothingness, and finally turned into nothingness and disappeared completely. It's not good to go on like this. We must think of a way to save ourselves as soon as possible. Although this is a time of life and death, unexpectedly, Shen Ziwu does not feel anxious at all. On the contrary, the more times like this, the calmer he becomes and the more divergent his thinking becomes. It was as if the crisis at this moment had stimulated the potential of Shen Ziwu, causing his brain to surpass its limits and spin at an unimaginable speed. In his more than 20 years of life, he had seen and learned. All knowledge and experiences are constantly emerging in my mind. What a wonderful feeling. Does this also belong to Mephista's ability? Although it was a question, Shen Ziwu's tone was affirmative, and he was still leisurely thinking about this kind of thing at the moment, which is enough to show that Shen Ziwu already had a solution. I didn't expect that what I traveled through was not just nothingness, but a world that I was familiar with. Kana murmured to himself. Marvel is not the Marvel comic universe with bugs everywhere, but the Marvel movie universe whose power has been greatly weakened. However, this Marvel movie universe seems to be a little different from what I know. However, these are irrelevant. As long as this is determined, there seems to be a lot of room for you to operate. As a concept, Mephista is the same as the demon Mephisto, the flame giant Serta, the Dark Lord Dormammu, the underworld Sithorn, and other Mephistas who have their own realms. The difference is that some Mephistas are naturally generated in their respective dimensional fields, some Mephistas are sublimated into Mephista existences by controlling the dimensional fields, some Mephistas are achieved through powerful power, and some Mephistas create their own unique own field and so on. But Shen Ziwu is very special. He does not belong to any of the above. The concept of nothingness is too special and has no corresponding dimension field. In other words, Shen Ziwu is a Mephista with no domain and no power. Without a domain, there is no place to stay, and naturally one has to face the erosion of nothingness. However, without power, it is naturally impossible to sublimate oneself slowly and control nothingness step by step. Therefore, for Shen Ziwu, the top priority is to create a realm where he can exist as the Lord of Nothingness. However, he needs to pay a huge price for this. Living in nothingness, in full contact with nothingness, as the Lord of Nothingness, the energy of Shen Ziwu is almost unlimited, and he can realize countless miraculous abilities in addition to protecting himself. He can gain extremely powerful power in an instant, but he cannot escape the erosion of nothingness after all, because this is a necessary process. If God creates a realm of nothingness in the concept of nothingness, although it breaks the concept of nothingness, but carries the name of nothingness, he will be able to use it to get closer to nothingness in the long years, and finally become the master of nothingness. In other words, this is the degradation of God's selflessness and the weakening of his own power. Even because of the original particularity of the concept of nothingness, the largest realm of nothingness he created with great effort was only a small realm with a length, width and height of 100 meters. And in order to fit in with the nothingness, this realm was even more chaos, with nothing existing. If God cannot bear loneliness, he can accomplish the achievements of the Lord of Nothingness in units of tens of thousands or billions of years. However, as a human being, he can endure 10 or hundreds of years of loneliness, allowing him to exist alone for tens of thousands of years and billions of years. Years, or even countless years, he felt that he did not need the erosion of nothingness. He himself had long since turned into nothingness and was no longer himself. However, becoming the Lord of Nothingness is such a hard work, and there is no shortcut at all. This is the contradiction between being human and nothingness originally, which God alone can overcome. In order to overcome the original contradiction between human beings and nothingness, Shen Ziwu suddenly had an idea. Since he can become the Lord of Nothingness, and can turn nothing into something through nothingness, and create a real realm, can he use this? Create more realms to achieve the supreme status of other Mephistas. However, in this way, nothingness must be higher than other concepts, so that other realms can be created. This is obviously impossible. After all, God Ziwu, the Lord of Nothingness, is equal to Mephistas like Mephisto. Although everything is born from nothing, it is obvious that the nothingness of God is not at such a high level. Although he has ideas, the top priority is to create a field to preserve himself. If he delays it any longer, Shen Ziwu will feel that no matter how many ideas he has, they will only be in vain. As soon as the idea came out, the power from the Lord of Nothingness began to spread in the concept of nothingness. Along with the birth of an absolutely dark point out of thin air in front of him, an indescribable loud noise seemed to appear in Kanna's already transparent ears. Then, the black dot spread rapidly, directly wrapping Shen Ziwu in it. And Shen Ziwu only felt that inexplicable energy was constantly rolling in front of his eyes. Chaos. Blessed to the soul, such a name appeared in Shen Ziwu's mind. But he was not the least bit surprised. After all, this was the field he created specifically. Among the knowledge he possessed, only chaos was the closest to nothingness. Although this chaos is just a small area with a length, width and height of 100 meters, it is completely different from the chaos space that Shen Ziwu remembered that could give birth to 3,000 Mephistas. However, being in this chaos, Shen Ziwu breathed a sigh of relief. After all, at least his life was saved at this moment. Although it was badly eroded by nothingness before, it is not without gain for the God who has preserved himself at this moment. As soon as he thought, the chaos tumbling around him immediately rushed towards Shen Ziwu. Shen Ziwu was like a black hole, constantly absorbing the chaos energy around him. Thanks to the previous erosion of nothingness, Kanna's body and soul have improved their essence a lot. Therefore, in order to restore his own entity at this moment, he absorbed almost 2/3 of the surrounding chaos before reaching the upper limit. Because of Shen Ziwu's initial preparation for this field of nothingness, the consumed chaos energy is slowly derived from the concept of nothingness until it fills the entire field of nothingness. At this moment, Shen Ziwu understood how powerful he was. Although he is temporarily unable to use the power of nothingness at this moment, his own energy and the ability he masters are definitely among the level single universe strongmen in the Marvel multi-universe. Reach the sky in one step. Shen Ziwu never thought that he would be able to achieve this level one day. As powerful as he is, the infinite gems in the Marvel movie universe are no longer effective against him. Even snapping their fingers at him cannot erase him. However, it seems that I can't play in the real world anymore. There are advantages and disadvantages. Although the power of a god is unimaginable, at the same time, he has his own domain. At this moment, like Dormammu and Sithorn, beings that are consistent with the domain, he cannot freely appear in reality. Because his power is too powerful, once it appears in reality, it will inevitably erode reality, turn it into his own realm of nothingness, and become his own appetite. However, God himself is originally a human being, and he is still a human being with normal views. Naturally, he disdains doing such inappropriate things. What's more, with his concept of nothingness, he doesn't need to be like other Mephistas who want to invade reality to strengthen themselves. So, he seemed to be in trouble again. Why did he specifically create the realm of nothingness? It's not just to preserve oneself, but not to have oneself destroyed by the long years, it's just to have fun. However, being in the realm of nothingness, he seemed to be trapped here again, and could only enjoy eternal loneliness. Gods are not willing to invade reality. Born as an orphan, he has lived an extremely difficult life since he was a child, so now that he has mastered such a powerful power, if he does not enjoy life well, he will definitely bury this divine power. Moreover, invading reality has benefits for Shen Ziwu, but they are definitely not many, and it will also bring him countless troubles and enemies. What he wants is fun, not endless war. Fun. War. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration occurred to him, and he thought of a better idea. Nothingness itself originally does not exist. Therefore, if Shen Ziwu wants to achieve the final achievement, he must get closer to non-existence step by step. This was originally an almost impossible thing for him. So, thinking about it conversely, he uses the characteristics of nothingness to create real worlds, and he is the common god of these worlds. One day, when the size of these worlds reaches a certain level, it will even surpass the original Marvel movie universe. At that time, could he become the supreme god of all heavens? The existence of the world is based on the cognition of life. Therefore, God created the realm of nothingness by relying on his own cognition. It's just that his cognition is too narrow, and the energy of the field is too huge, so the field of nothingness is only so big. The fun and war that Kami Zimu had thought of before came from the settings in the novels he had seen. Use reality as the anchor to guide countless lives to understand the world they create. When there is enough knowledge, then the created world must be absolutely real. Create a world of heavens. Shen Ziwu was lying in chaos and affirmed this idea. Just give it a try. Even if you fail, you can still have some fun. If you succeed, the rewards will be great. After mastering extremely powerful power, Kanna's mobility became extremely fast. After thinking about it, Shen Ziwu began to use the realm of nothingness to pry the barriers of reality. Because there is not originally a substantial distance between the realm and reality, the existence of the two is more like a state of superposition. Therefore, as Mephista, Kami Ziwu naturally controls the ability to move the barriers of reality and affect reality. For Mephista, this is almost instinctive. As a trace of nihilistic divine power penetrated into reality, like hot oil hitting cold water, it immediately caused huge amounts of sensation. Countless Mephistas in their respective fields have sensed the emergence of a new Mephista. Moreover, as if they had known each other for a long time, they all called out the name of Mephista, who was invincible. Lord of Nothingness. In the Hell Dimension, Mephisto sat on his throne and looked ahead coldly. A new Mephista, another competitor is born. In the Dark Dimension, Dormammu's will suddenly emerge. In this darkness, he also felt the new Mephista, the Lord of Nothingness, a lucky guy. In the flickering field, Sithorn stared in front of him, as if through the barriers of the dimensional field, he saw a god himself, a new Mephista, an unseen dimension. Asgard, Odin, who had his eyes closed in deep thought, suddenly widened his eyes and stood up in shock. A power I have never seen before. Is it another Mephista who wants to invade reality? Earth, Kamar Taj, Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One who was meditating slowly opened his eyes and raised his head to look at the roof. His eyes were full of solemnity. Then he stood up and a magic circle of light immediately appeared in front of him. He walked around. Get into it. In the universe, the eternal titan Thanos noticed the movement of Kami Ziwu, and he sneered, another guy who doesn't know what he means. One by one, powerful beings were alarmed by Kami Ziwu's actions. At this moment, they all knew that a new Mephista was born. At the same time, this Mephista had ideas about reality. Shen Zhiwu naturally understood the thoughts of other strongmen, and as he moved the edge of reality, he felt a lot of will to explore. Although everyone knows that Shen Zhiwu, the Lord of Nothingness, is a new student, they know nothing about Shen Zhiwu's strength. In order to live a stable life, they must find out clearly. In response, Kanajimu snorted coldly, and released his own level single universe and other powers. Their will to explore in the future was shocked. Although the strength of Shen Zhiwu is nothing to other powerful people like Shi Thorn whose strength exceeds level single universe, these existences are either originally unwilling to cause more trouble, or they are like Shi Thorn. Thorn is trapped in his own dimension and unable to move freely. Therefore, the strength of level single universe is enough for Shen Zhiwu to carry out his plan boldly. In the Marvel movie universe, the Earth is a very special existence, especially in this universe that surprises God. The specialness of the Earth is even more unimaginable. After all, Kana had never thought that this Marvel movie universe was also a multi-universe. Moreover, it is not simply the multi-universe of Avengers, which also includes independent universes such as Mutant, Ghost Rider, Blade Warrior, Spider-Man, Venom, Fantastic Four, Daredevil, etc. However, for Kana, these independent universes of superheroes are not very attractive to him. The place where he mainly implements his plans is the absolute timeline of Avengers. At the moment, the absolute timeline returns to the beginning. Tony Stark was once again kidnapped by terrorists in the timeline according to the set script and trapped in the desert. Tony, who had just experienced the torture, sat haggardly by the fire, holding the battery that kept him alive in his arms. His eyes were dull and he looked like he was useless. Ethan on the side offered persuasive words. Do you want to give up just like this? Is this the last resistance of the great Tony Stark? Or do you want to do something? Tony looked at the dancing flames and said in despair, why did? They will kill us anyway. Even if they don't kill me, I probably won't survive more than a week. Ethan looked at Tony. So, this is a crucial week, right? Tony's eyes became sharp, and Ethan's words reminded him that if he continued to resist, he would have no use value, and these terrorists might really kill him, and they wouldn't even have to wait a week. If he died, it would be just a fantasy to escape from here. So, a plan must be made. Tony lowered his head in deep thought, his smart brain constantly working, thinking of ways to escape from here. Soon, an incredible idea appeared in his mind. The next day, Tony agreed to the Ten Commandments gang's request to make weapons for them, but in return, the Ten Commandments gang had to provide him with the materials needed to make weapons. In this regard, Tony listed a long list of materials. He believed that these idiots could not understand what he really wanted to do. Soon, the materials Tony requested finally arrived, and the first thing he did after getting the materials was to build a miniature arc reactor. With Ethan's help, Tony successfully created such an energetic little guy. Looking at the miniature arc reactor emitting a faint blue light, Ethan asked doubtfully, what is this? This thing doesn't look like a Jericho missile. Tony held up the reactor. This is a miniature arc oscillation reactor. I have one in my hometown to power my factory. This should prevent shrapnel from entering my heart. Ethan nodded. How about its ability to generate electricity? Tony replied. If the calculation is correct, 3 billion joules per second. Ethan joked. That's enough to last you 50 lives. Tony said thoughtfully. Yes, or enough for a big guy to move around for 15 minutes. After showing Ethan the design drawing he secretly drew, Tony and both of them had hope of survival. Relying on Ethan's medical skills, Tony removed the obstructive battery and replaced it with a cool LED light. When the miniature arc reactor entered the hole in Tony's chest, the suction force generated by the energy instantly made him take a breath. Along with this moment of discomfort, something seemed to be activated in Tony's mind, making him immersed in it. The account has been activated, and the Scientists' Forum of the Heavens welcomes those cursed by knowledge to join. Tony asked softly, causing Ethan to look at him doubtfully. What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere? Tony frowned and thought for a moment, then shook his head. Maybe the energy is too strong, and I have some auditory hallucinations. I just need to get familiar with it. Ethan said with concern. If there is a problem, please tell me early, and in the worst case, we will replace the battery with the previous one. Tony shook his head, and then stood up from the bed. He planned to move around a little in the cave to get used to the broad little guy on his chest. At night, while lying in bed, Tony had a dream. In the dream, a mechanical voice appeared out of thin air. When entering deep sleep, do you want to enable the laboratory module? What? Tony was confused. Is this a dream? What kind of dream is this? This voice seems to be the one I heard during the day. However, after waiting for a while, the voice disappeared again. Tony was puzzled. Hey, what on earth is going on? Question detected. Open the Q&A module of Zudian Scientists Forum. User, cursed by knowledge, you can ask 3 questions on the Zudian Scientists Forum. Scientists Forum. Tony's mind was full of doubts. What is this? To answer the question, a brief description of the Zudian Scientists Forum will be given to the users. The Zudian Scientists Forum is a forum that links scientists from the endless world of the universe. Anyone who has an account as a top scientist in the world. As long as he embarks on the path of destiny, he can activate his account and have the ability to publish papers in the forum, discuss knowledge, and open access to research. The main purpose of this forum is learning, communication, and progress. As this information entered Tony's mind, he became even more confused. It's so strange, this dream. It doesn't sound scientific at all. But his strong curiosity still made Tony couldn't help but continue to ask, why didn't I see that forum? What website do I need to log into, or is there any other way? Answer the question and answer it to the user now. Users only need to silently recite the Scientists Forum of all heavens in their minds, and a forum interface can be formed in front of them that only they can see. There is no need to log into the website in such a backward way. Tony raised his eyebrows and said thoughtfully, interesting. It seems like this. Before he finished speaking, the voice sounded again. After the 3 questions have been answered, no more user questions will be answered. After saying that, the voice fell completely silent, catching Tony off guard. Why did you only ask 3 questions? Didn't I only ask 2? As if he had thought of something, Tony's face darkened, a rigid program. With this level of intelligence, my JARVIS will beat you 10,000 times. However, thinking that he was in a dream now, Tony wanted to slap himself. There was no point in trying to compete with a dream. He was too nervous these days. However, his strong curiosity made him unconsciously think of the voice's answer. Remembering the Forum of Scientists from all heavens in my mind. Tony smiled casually. How is it possible? This is outrageous. The forum that suddenly appeared in front of him made Tony unable to say the next words. Top. Basic rules of the Zudian Scientists Forum. I hope everyone will be honest and trustworthy and stick to the bottom line of a scientist. Top. Dr. Jero from the Dragon Ball world has left his own world. I hope you will be careful about this crazy evil scientist. Top tip. Don't discuss technology with, want to eat sheep. His theory is very unreasonable and cannot be realized. It is recommended that this kind of unworthy existence be kicked out of the forum. On the connection between rules and the world, a little superficial thinking, everyone is welcome to come in and discuss. As the relationship between parallel universe and multi-universe superimposed or separate. How to create something out of nothing, on the connection between the Big Bang and creation out of thin air. Material analysis, perfect scanning technology. Dimension travel theory, a basic formula. Looking at the bizarre discussion items and the 3 pinned posts, Tony suddenly felt as if his brain was running out of energy. Let's not talk about the 3 posts at the top. Looking at the titles below, you can see how profound these discussions are, and even Tony himself has no clue about them. With curiosity in mind, Tony made a thought and was about to reach out to click on the title of the post in front of him. The post he was interested in was instantly lit up, and then the picture in front of him changed into the actual discussion of the post. For example, in the Big Bang Theory, the universe was formed from a dense and hot singularity that expanded after a big explosion, and the universe originally was still constantly expanding. Based on this theory, the Big Bang was originally a process of creation out of nothing. So can we reproduce this result? Don't preach. The argument of the subject is very interesting, but the Big Bang Theory is not accessible to all worlds. If this result is replicated, it will not be accessible to all worlds. Big Blue Eagle. The existence of matter originally is very special. Creating something out of nothing seems to deviate from the rules of material composition, but the universe originally is also constantly expanding. This is a paradox. No, it is the truth. Knowledge is the only thing. But the singularity originally is an unobservable and unknowable thing. All the known universes do not have any singularity matter, and does the singularity originally also come out of nothing? I am Drive Dongyan. A series of fantastic ideas and a series of rigorous deductions left a deep impression on Tony's mind. At the same time, these discussions also made countless inspirations emerge in Tony's mind. If it weren't for the wrong position he is in now, he must immediately enter his laboratory to verify it. He carefully read through the discussions, but later on, Tony also understood. Because of the original grandness of the topic, and the different basic attributes of everyone's world in the forum, this issue has been discussed over and over again without reaching a conclusion. Therefore, although there is still an endless understanding behind, Tony has satisfied his curiosity and no longer wants to read any more. After that, Tony spent a long time hanging around the forum. Although he was able to speak, at the moment he thought it was his dream, and those incredible theories were actually projected based on his original cognition. Although he didn't understand the reason for this, Tony didn't have such a split idea of talking to himself, so he just continued to be his diver. When he felt a little tired, he reluctantly closed the forum and wanted to wake up. The thought came to him, and with just this thought, Tony immediately felt like his consciousness was suddenly pulled out. Hiss. Tony opened his eyes suddenly and sat up from the bed, feeling the fatigue coming from his spirit. He was extremely confused and at the same time had an imperceptible expectation. On the other side, Ethan was sleeping soundly. He saw hope of escaping from here, and because of Tony, his life was no longer threatened. Ethan also had a rare good sleep. Tony glanced at Ethan, who had a gentle smile on his face, and guessed that he must have been dreaming about that woman. Pepper's face appeared in his mind, and Tony's desire to escape from this place became stronger. He wished he could build that mechanical battle suit immediately and kill all the terrorists here. Taking a deep breath and adjusting his mentality, he recalled the dream experience. With a hint of hope that he couldn't even detect, Tony tentatively muttered, "Scientists' Forum." As soon as such a thought crossed his mind, Tony laughed at himself. He was really too fanciful. How could such a thing come true? It was just a dream. However, as soon as this thought came to his mind, a familiar yet unfamiliar picture appeared in front of him. Tony's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief. It's actually true. Looking at the familiar forum, Tony at the moment felt extremely strange, not only because the dream he thought had come true, but also because the content on this thing was true, so his understanding of the world, but it's so subversive. After swallowing, Tony shakily focused on the discussion thread he had clicked on before. However, what he didn't expect was that instead of entering the post, a reminder popped up in the picture in front of him. The novice experience period has expired. You are currently a first-level user and can only browse first-level content. To increase your level, publish a paper. Tony's face froze, and the previous excitement disappeared instantly. Newbie. Level 1. Looking at the post carefully again, I discovered that at the end, A7 marked the level of the post. According to the prompt, only users with level 7 or above can view and discuss the post. As for how to improve your level, it is very simple to publish a paper. Tony opened his mouth and wanted to complain. He thought that he was a person with high ability and a genius scientist, but he was only at level 1. That means there was no way to recharge in this forum, otherwise he would have to reach the full level for himself. Being restricted, Tony could only sigh with dismay at the content that he was very interested in, and carefully studied other content and functions of the forum. Soon, relying on his intelligence, Tony successfully found many functions and contents that he had never noticed before. The first is the overall section of the forum. Unlike forums on computers, because of the wonders of the Zudian Scientists Forum, those tedious and detailed functions are not marked one by one, but change with the changes in the user's thoughts. In other words, how much users know about Zudian Scientists Forum will determine the performance of this forum. For example, Tony had a shallow understanding of forums at the beginning. The forum in front of him was a very simple row of titles with no other unnecessary information. Now he understands that discussion posts require levels, and the words, level restrictions, appear behind those titles. After knowing about publishing the paper, Tony can also move the screen to the paper publishing interface and the paper viewing and downloading interface at a thought. Similarly, if you want to view and download related papers, you also need level restrictions. There is also a forum currency called knowledge points. Users can know the depth of the paper based on the number of knowledge points required for the paper. The method of earning knowledge points seems to require publishing valid papers in order to obtain knowledge points. As for whether he will get access to his papers after others view and download them, he is still unclear. In the forum, Tony also discovered a hidden function, which allows you to filter the content you want to see. If Tony only wants to see first-level posts or first-level papers, then only first-level content will appear in the forum in front of him. At the same time, it can also be classified in more detail. If the filtering is detailed enough, Tony can completely find the content he wants. The search function does a great job. After briefly sifting through the content of the forum in front of him, Tony noticed a familiar pinned post. Top. Basic rules of the Zeudian Scientists Forum. I hope everyone will be honest and trustworthy and stick to the bottom line of a scientist. After seeing the title, Tony quickly clicked in. After seeing the content, Tony wanted to slap himself. What happened to him today? Why did he always do stupid things? What was the use of his previous research? The pinned post tells everyone the operating rules of the Zeudian Scientists Forum. In order to help everyone better use the Zeudian Scientists Forum, some basic operation rules are now published below. 1. All operations of the Zeudian Scientists Forum are based on personal cognition and ideas. It can meet the various needs of a scientist, but it also requires imagination. As a scientist, not having imagination is stupid. 2. The Zeudian Scientists Forum is divided into levels. When new users first activate the user, they can have an unlimited novice experience period, from the first time they open the forum interface to the time they close the forum interface. During the novice experience period, there are no level restrictions for discussion posts in the forum, and 9 papers below level 3 can be read in the essay area without consuming knowledge points. Idiots who close the forum without reading the content of this post, are they really going to put food in your mouths? 3. Acquisition of knowledge points. In addition to general published papers, you can also gain knowledge points by publishing effective content in discussion threads and getting approval from the forum and other scientists, but not much nonsense. There are always many people in the world who will accept your boring theory. If you can get some weird recognition by posting, shit, wouldn't it be able to gain knowledge points? At the same time, if the published paper is viewed and downloaded by others, you can also get 1/10,000th of the selling price. Don't feel that you are being exploited. Currently, the most profitable articles in the forum are those papers on basic theoretical knowledge. As a scientist, you should understand that quantitative changes lead to qualitative changes. 4. The Zeudian Scientists Forum provides users with their own laboratory space. Everything in it will initially be restored 1-to-1 according to your own laboratory. If adjustments are needed, they can be adjusted for free during the novice period, otherwise just spend money. No way, no one really closed the forum without reading this pinned post. 5. Assistant system. Zeudian Scientists Forum provides each user with a basic assistant. This assistant helps you complete the operation of the forum. You can modify the assistant settings by yourself, which provides the same benefits for novices. Well, you may have missed a lot, but it doesn't matter, as long as you have knowledge points, it will be fine. If you don't have knowledge points, then don't publish a paper. 99. It is best not to expose your identity in the forum unless you are very confident in your own strength. This is the last one. It exhausted me to death and took me a lot of time. Okay, that's it. You can figure out the rest by yourself. I won't care. Guess which Einstein of the world I am. Tony read all the content with a black eye. Obviously these contents are very important for newcomers, but looking at the weird words in the brackets, Tony really wanted to pull out the person who wrote this post and beat him up. Because it's him who those weird words are talking about, he's the idiot who missed out on the novice period benefits. Guess which world I am the Einstein of? Tony sneered. I was just saying not to reveal my identity, but I revealed my identity. What a bad guy. But, what's the level? Confused, Tony quickly checked this person's level. However, what appeared in front of him was the word, ****. Obviously, the other party was more than 2 levels higher than him, so he couldn't see the other party's level. Having said that, Tony didn't take the other person's name seriously. After all, he was familiar with the name Einstein. If there were multiple Einsteins in the world, it was enough to show that the other party was confident that no one else could find it. If there is only one Einstein he is familiar with, then the other person's name is purely misleading. So, despite Tony's swearing, he believed that the other party really hid his identity in accordance with Rule 99. And through this article, and Tony's recall of seeing the title of the pinned post before, it shows that the worlds do not exist independently, and there are always ways to allow people to travel between the worlds at will. Now Tony already believed 80% of the All Heaven Scientists Forum, so after realizing this, he suddenly felt inexplicable anxiety. As a scientist, he can rationally deduce that although he is a genius, he is definitely not a top existence. There are always some incredible existences in other worlds, just like Dr. Groh who pinned the post to the top. Sticking it to the top is enough to illustrate the danger of Dr. Gero. There is also the being named, Want to Eat Sheep. Although the title indicates that his theory is unreasonable, he is certainly not a simple person to be ranked alongside Dr. Gero. Closing the post with deep eyes, Tony stared at the picture in front of him, unable to react for a long time. The amount of information was too much. He needed to clear his mind and calm down before he could make the most rational decision calmly. After a long while, Tony took a long breath and turned his head to look at Ethan, who was sleeping soundly. There was no trace of ripples on his face hidden in the darkness. Looks like I'm going to have to stay up late in the next few days. Shaking his head, Tony returned his attention to the Tiantian Scientists Forum. After filtering, the posts in front of him became first-level impressive. Energy Innovation, on the rational use of natural energy. Cold Fusion Discussion Post, if you have any questions, you can discuss it here. Reasonable Calculation of Mechanical Thrust. Prospective Application of Magnetic Levitation Technology, from Weapons to Civilian Verification. Artificial Intelligence Algorithms, let's discuss them. Looking at the questions that he could understand, Tony finally no longer felt ignorant. However, what he didn't expect was that at just level 1, the content of the post had already reached his current limit. Through the novice rules, Tony realized that although users who first activate the forum are qualified to level 1, they do not only have level 1 for publishing papers and discussion posts. The forum will automatically be graded based on the content of the papers. In other words, if a scientist whose original scientific and technological level reaches level 9 publishes a level 9 paper and discussion post when the forum level is level 1, it will not be classified as level 1. Under such rules, the levels in the forum will not be thrown into chaos, and scientists with high levels of knowledge can quickly rise to the level they deserve in the forum in a very short period of time. Such a complete rule gave Tony some ideas. He thought that after he returned, he could build a similar internal website within Stark Industries. In this way, he would be able to better discover powerful people in Stark Industries. It even promotes this website to the whole world, so that it can greatly integrate the top scientists on the Earth. After realizing that the world was not independent, Tony felt a sense of urgency, which gave him many ideas that he had never had before. However, now is not the time to think about this. The top priority is to escape from the current predicament. Only by returning alive can he realize his ideas. Reading through the posts in the forum attentively, Tony now urgently needs technology that can help him complete the steel battle suit faster and better. In today's situation, Tony has neither the thought nor time to publish a paper, and naturally does not have the knowledge to search for relevant papers. Although it can also be searched in discussion posts, the title of the post is a personal habit, and there are always some people who find another way. Choose some weird names so that he misses the effective content. For this reason, Tony could only find what he needed after a cursory search and rely on his scientific literacy. How to effectively complete fire control technology when equipment and materials are scarce and rudimentary. Tony's eyes narrowed, and he found a post that might have a miraculous effect on his current situation. Quickly clicking on this post, Tony immediately started reading it carefully. As a scientist, you cannot be limited by the environment. Scientific research is a test of wisdom. If you are limited by the environment, it means that wisdom is not enough. This post is about the completion of fire control technology under the assumption that the research environment is harsh. A simple analysis of the fire control system is a simple shooting process of setting the target, tracking the target, aiming the weapon, and launching the weapon until it hits the target. However, to achieve this, a reconnaissance system, a control system, and a launch system are needed. Tony gained a lot from the concise content, because it did not give fixed data, but more theoretical ideas, so Tony did not need to import the content into basic formulas and recalculate to adapt to this world. Basically, Tony only needs to apply the theory to his current environment and make a reasonable calculation with the resources he has, so that he can maximize the use of resources and complete a fire control system that is stable enough. Applying this result to his own design, Tony found that the firepower of the steel battle suit can be increased by 30%, and it is also more stable. While reading the discussion below the post, he was silently calculating in his mind. By the time Tony came to his senses, Ethan had woken up at some point and was quietly eating breakfast. Being in the cave, Tony had no concept of day and night, and could only determine the approximate time based on the terrorists' meal delivery time. Ethan handed Tony's meal to him. "I see that you didn't sleep well last night. Could it be that I was snoring?" When Tony saw that Ethan really couldn't see the scene in front of him, he shrugged. "Although we have lived together for several days, I am still not used to sleeping with a man next to me." Ethan laughed. "Understand, the most famous playboy in New York can have dinner with the cover girl of Maxim magazine every month." Tony explained. "Wow, I didn't expect that my heroic deeds would spread to such a remote place. But I'm only partly right. I didn't have a schedule in March because of my schedule, but luckily it was twins in December." Ethan: "That sounds really jealous." Tony was noncommittal. "This is just a daily flavoring. I still like to study it, just like the big guy." Ethan asked, "Have you never thought about marrying a woman?" "I have a daughter, who is the most beautiful angel in the world." Tony shrugged. "My father only had me when he was 53 years old, and he inherited his father's business. I think I will be able to have a child by that time." Ethan looked at the blue light on Tony's chest and said pointedly, "I hope you can really live until that time." Quote. Tony fell silent. Both of them have made achievements in the scientific field, and Ethan also has certain medical knowledge, so they all understand that although Tony can save his life, there are other things brought by the micro-arc reactor. Question. However, the most important thing now is to escape from here. If this cannot be achieved, no matter how much worry you have, it will be a castle in the air. After breakfast, the two of them went to work again. "Where should we start?" Ethan looked at the pile of things and had no idea where to start. Tony leaned over the table. "I need to modify some content, please help with this first." Ethan took the drawings given by Tony. He looked at the contents, and then buried himself in confusion. "Have you always been like this when making things? Don't you have a good habit of starting work directly after confirming the drawings?" Tony immersed himself in writing and drawing. "Sometimes that's what happens when inspiration strikes, but don't worry, after my redesign, the time we need can be reduced by 2 hours." Ethan was helpless. "It's best." In this way, Tony and Ethan were busy. Tony revised the design drawings during the day and checked and filled in the gaps through the Zudian Scientists Forum at night. Although the progress was a bit slow, as the design drawings became more and more complete, the subsequent production the progress is also getting faster and faster. Ethan was greatly surprised by this production experience, and at the same time he admired Tony, a world-famous playboy. In such a harsh environment, Tony was able to complete such a war machine under the eyes of others, which fully demonstrates Tony's ability in weapon design. After nearly a week of busy work, finally on this night, the two completed the production of the steel battle suit named Mark I by Tony. Although the battle suit has not yet been assembled, Tony and Ethan were both excited and full of hope when looking at the big guy hidden behind the curtain. An uncontrollable smile appeared on Tony's lips. "The system will be uploaded tonight, and after the last breakfast tomorrow morning, we will leave here." Ethan smiled. "Tony, what do you want to do when you go back?" Tony raised his eyebrows. "Eat a cheeseburger. I miss this little guy so much." "What about you, Ethan? Do you want to work in Stark Industries?" Ethan shook his head and refused. I want to go back and do something for my hometown. Tony knew where Ethan's hometown was, and he frowned, but it's too dangerous there. Ethan, I will send someone to pick up your family when we get back. Ethan had a smile on his face, but his eyes were full of sadness. My wife and my angel have returned to God, so I can't leave. Tony opened his mouth. He suddenly didn't know how to persuade Ethan. He never knew that Ethan's family members had passed away. His hometown carried Ethan's sustenance. How could he prevent a man from returning to his spiritual sustenance? The land patted Ethan's shoulder. If you need anything, remember to contact me. Ethan smiled and said, definitely, I won't be polite. Tony smiled in relief. That's the best. Ethan replied, there are not many opportunities to rip off big players. At this moment, the two men who shared the same adversity became much closer, and Tony, who had always been aloof, rarely gained a friendship that was not mixed with any calculations. The next day, Tony and Ethan woke up early. Before breakfast was served, they stared nervously at the progress bar flashing on the computer screen. Glancing at the homemade mechanical watch in his hand, Tony looked very nervous. Hurry up. Hurry up. It'll be breakfast time in 10 minutes. Ethan was also very nervous at the moment. Their emotions at the moment made them forget to cover up as usual, and they all gathered behind the curtain, which meant that they could not be seen in the surveillance equipment. In the monitoring room, people who were taking over shifts were joking with each other until a person sat in front of the monitoring screen. At a casual glance, his face immediately became ugly. They disappeared. A shout attracted the attention of the entire base. Soon, the terrorists discovered that Tony Stark, who was supposed to be making weapons for them within the surveillance range, had disappeared, and the curtain blocking the view in the surveillance area was very suspicious. Quick, quick, open the door quickly. The terrorist leader looked gloomily and led his men towards the cave where Tony was imprisoned. When the two men guarding the door saw that their boss had a bad look on his face, they immediately opened the door. In the cave, Tony and Tony, who heard the noise outside, were just finishing dressing up in their steel battle suits at the moment. Putting on his helmet, Tony quickly protected Ethan behind him. Get behind me. When the iron door was opened, Tony walked out from behind the curtain and walked calmly towards the terrorists. As soon as the terrorists opened the door, they saw a big guy wrapped in steel appearing in a place where he shouldn't be. They were immediately frightened out of their wits. Seeing the big steel guy walking towards them quickly, the terrorists immediately roared, raised their weapons and poured bullets at each other. Ah 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 ah. Choo 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 choo. Screams and roars, accompanied by flames spraying from the muzzle of the machine gun, countless hot bullets flashing on the steel battle suit, and the beating bullets scattered to every corner of the cave. When the bullets in the guns of the terrorists in front of them were all empty and they were hurriedly changing the magazines, Tony had already walked to the front of the terrorist. The action of changing the magazine froze for an instant, and the terrorist looked up at the cold visor in horror. Bang! The body was thrown away like a rag, hit the iron door hard, and then fell to the ground, splashing dust, and showed no sign of moving again. As if it was a signal, countless terrorists were immediately vulnerable to Tony's steel battle suit. Soon, the entire cave was filled with corpses with all their bones broken and their vitality receded. Snow White, follow me, be careful of stray bullets. After making a small joke, Tony led Ethan to kill outside the cave. Before leaving the iron gate, Ethan picked up a submachine gun from the ground, replaced the bullets with a serious look on his face. Ah, run, don't run, kill him, do not be afraid. Quote. Led by the terrorist leader who had fled immediately after something bad happened, the terrorists in this base raised their guns and shot at Tony. Under the violent firepower, Tony punched one at a time and eliminated all the terrorists in front of him. In this situation of unequal power, some frightened terrorists began to retreat towards the rear, but were stopped by people rushing from behind. For a moment, their team became confused. Seeing this situation, the leader immediately shot and killed several deserters who escaped from the battle. After frightening his men, he immediately made arrangements. A small number of people fought and retreated, and the others followed him and retreated directly from the cave, and then prepared their cannons, tubes and explosives, trying to bury Tony in the cave. They were punched and kicked all the way, blood and flesh were flying all the way, and they were wailing all the way. Tony and Ethan really fought a bloody path. As the brightness around them became brighter and brighter, the obstacles in front became smaller and smaller. They were excited because this meant that they were getting closer to the entrance of the cave. It's time to escape this nightmare place. Outside the cave, the terrorists have aimed all their weapons at the entrance, waiting for the target to appear, the leader to give the order, and then completely destroy it. With a scream, a figure flew out of the cave and hit the ground hard, lifeless. In the tense mood of all the terrorists, a steel armor shining with cold light appeared in front of them. Under the sun, the blood-stained steel armor reflected the dazzling light, making people afraid to look directly at it. Fire! The leader roared angrily, and the barrage of firepower immediately flooded the entire cave. At the same time, along with thick exhaust gas, several artillery shells fell around the cave. Seeing those shells, Tony in the steel battle suit secretly screamed, turned around quickly, and stretched out his steel arms to protect Ethan. Boom, 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 boom. There was a thunderous roar, and the explosion rolled up smoke and dust in the desert that obscured the vision, making it difficult to see the result. Ceasefire. After giving the order, the terrorists took their fingers away from the trigger, and then looked nervously at the smoke-filled place ahead, waiting for the final result as if they were waiting for a trial. As the smoke gradually faded, the results ahead slowly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. They saw that the original cave had been completely buried by the sand at the moment, and they instantly burst into cheers of surviving the disaster. After all, the steel battle suit is too terrifying. The guns that kill countless people cannot pose any threat to it. In this case, they can only passively wait for death. Now, the death god in their hearts is buried in the desert, and there is no longer any threat. How unhappy are they? Only the leader showed a smile, but it was more of a pity that although the order was completed, he could not get the Jericho missile that he wanted so much. However, things obviously would not develop as they imagined. Along with a dazzling blue-white beam of light shooting toward the sky from the sand, a large thing shining with metallic reflections flew out with sand and dust. Tony held the dying Ethan with an extremely ugly face. Although he withstood the direct attack of the missile, the aftermath of the explosion was still difficult for Ethan's mortal body to withstand, not to mention that after the cave was destroyed, the all-pervasive sand buried them. Getting up put Ethan, who was already hurt, into a precarious situation. Flying in the air, Tony couldn't hover yet, so he, filled with anger, made a turn in the air, ignoring the rapid consumption of energy and the warnings from rough materials. Stretching out his free right hand, a thick blue-white beam was fired again, and this time the target was not to open the escape route above his head, but to the weapons and ammunition storage place among the terrorists. He knew that there were many firearms and missiles produced by Stark Industries there. The terrorists on the ground had already started to hide in fear when Tony raised his hand to shoot. However, as a dazzling beam fell from the sky, they were shocked to find that the target of the beam was not them, but the pile. A weapons storage place with countless missiles. Get down! A shrill roar was instantly buried by huge amounts of fire. Boom, 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 boom. Countless missiles were detonated, and huge amounts of explosions caused a series of explosion reactions around them. In the blink of an eye, the entire terrorist base was completely engulfed in flames. In this kind of explosion that wiped out everything, just lying down could not guarantee their lives. In the huge amounts of firelight, Tony anxiously held the dying Ethan and flew towards the distance. After the signal jammer was destroyed, Tony directly activated the signal transmitting and receiving device. After determining the general direction, Tony continued to squeeze the performance of the steel battle suit and flew quickly towards the U.S. military base. However, the material used to make the steel battle suit was rough after all, so under Tony's reckless pressure, the entire steel battle suit vibrated in the air. Tony understands that if this continues, the battle suit will eventually disintegrate. In order not to cause secondary damage to Ethan, he has no choice but to fall to the ground in advance before the battle suit disintegrates, and then disassemble the battle suit into a simple place for Ethan. He was holding a signaling device and pulling the cart towards the front on foot. After walking for a while, Tony suddenly heard the sound of a propeller turning behind him. Turning around, he saw a U.S. military helicopter flying low in his direction. Tony waved him here, then sat down on the sand, looked at Ethan who had his eyes closed and was unconscious, and said, "Hey, Snow White, don't expect me, the prince, to give you a kiss to wake you up, or let someone come and kiss you to wake you up." After saying something joyful, Tony was still very worried about Ethan, but he was so arrogant that he obviously couldn't express his concern. The helicopter stopped not far away. Tony walked quickly with Ethan, and a familiar figure got off the helicopter. James Rhodes ran forward and breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Tony, who was intact, as the jeep comfortable. In response to his best friend's joke, Tony just responded with a smile full of emotion. James gave Tony a hug. "Sit in the same car with me next time, okay?" He helped Tony get onto the helicopter, while the medics brought the unconscious and seriously injured Ethan to the helicopter for first aid. Looking at Ethan, whose vital signs were temporarily stabilized, James asked, "Who is this man?" Tony drank water. "A man competing with you for favor." James said, funny, "Hey, don't you only have me as your friend?" Tony smiled. "Now that there is one more person, you can try to please me and regain my favor." James made an expression of rejection. "You were so stimulated that you changed your orientation." As they joked and chatted with each other along the way, Tony understood that the other party was trying to comfort himself so that he would not suffer from any mental illness due to the stimulation of this encounter. He was very grateful for this and kept every bit of it in his heart. At the New York military airport, Tony walked off the plane with James's support and a bandage. In front of him were the worried female assistant Pepper Potts, and his exclusive driver and bodyguard Happy is waiting for him. Walking up to little Pepper, he felt very warm in his heart when he saw the worried and excited expression on the other person's face, but the words coming out of his mouth were a bit misspoken. "Your eyes are red. Are you sad about your missing boss?" Xiao Zhao smiled and replied, "I'm glad, it saves me the trouble of finding another job." "Well, get ready." After refusing to go to the hospital and arranging Ethan, who had already been treated, to the best hospital, Tony got in the car and asked Pepper to prepare a press conference. He was going to go now. Definitely, he wants a cheeseburger before that. Arriving at the press conference, Tony's trusted uncle Obadiah Stane happily welcomed him. Watching Tony walking towards the press conference, a relaxed smile appeared on little Pepper's face. At this moment, a gentle voice suddenly came from beside her, "Miss Potts." Little Pepper quickly turned around and looked around. Two men appeared beside her. One was a Caucasian man with severe balding hair but a gentle face. The other was an Asian man with a square face and a red nose and a very funny appearance. When these two people stand together, they are like the Joker in the circus, making people laugh. Forcibly suppressing her laughter, Pepper responded, "Is something okay? You two gentlemen." Both of them saw Pepper's expression. The white man was helpless, but he still said, "Can we talk to you?" Little Pepper thought the two people in front of her were reporters, so she said awkwardly, "I won't accept interviews. If you have any questions, the press conference will start immediately." White male, "We are not reporters. I am Phil Coulson, agent, and next to me is Fox Ferry Chin, who works in the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency." As he said this, he handed over a business card, which made little Pepper's head grow bigger. It's a bit of a mouthful. After listening to the complaints, Agent Phil Coulson replied skillfully, "I know, we are working hard to solve it." Taking the business card, Pepper said, "The Department of Defense, the FBI, and the CIA have all contacted us." Before she finished speaking, Agent Chin interrupted her directly, "We are an independent department and have more power than them." Agent Phil Coulson explained, "Our department's functions are more centralized. We would like to ask Mr. Stark to describe the escape process in detail." Little Pepper didn't want to get involved in this issue anymore and said directly, "I will arrange it, okay." Phil Coulson, agent, "Thank you." After saying that, Agent Phil Coulson pulled Agent Chin and left. "Don't say such misleading things. I think you should go back to Agent Academy to repeat your studies." Agent Chin didn't care. "I'm just a combatant. I shouldn't have been involved in these exchanges." Phil Coulson, agent, was speechless. "You are the one who wants to follow me." Seeing the two people leaving while arguing, Xiao Zhao shook his head speechlessly, put the business card away and looked at the press conference. Obadiah stood in front of the speaking table and awkwardly greeted everyone present and announced the start of the press conference. However, the maverick Tony couldn't stand for a long time due to physical reasons. He didn't force himself to hold on and sat directly on the ground, looked at everyone, and took out another cheeseburger from his pocket. "Hey, can everyone sit down?" he waved, Can everyone sit down? That way you can see me and I can be more casual. Although they were reluctant and felt it was losing their status, the reporters present reluctantly sat on the ground in order to get first-hand news. Behind the crowd, James and Pepper, who were sitting next to each other, looked confused and had no idea what Tony wanted to do. Agent Phil Coulson and Agent Chin, who were also sitting on the ground, were discussing different topics. Agent Chin complained, "This mustache has the same virtues as his father, they both go their own way." Agent Phil Coulson said, "Aren't you afraid of being deducted from your salary by the director for slandering a senior like this?" Agent Chin spread his hands. "When did that fool who looks like a braised egg give you a bonus? Joe Poppy is more generous than him, so why should you care about that dead salary?" Phil Coulson agent touched his thinning hair. "That's right, I still want to save money to restore my former style." In response, Agent Chin attacked, "Don't think about it, unless there is a genetic mutation, it is impossible for you to grow your hair back." Phil Coulson agent was very disappointed. "Can't you even use your martial arts skills?" "Cannot." At the press conference, Tony and Obadiah looked at each other with joy. "Tony, it's great to see you again. I didn't even get to see my dad for the last time. I didn't even get the chance to say goodbye to my dad." Looking at everyone, a trace of memories appeared in Tony's eyes. "I have a question to ask him. I want to ask him what his thoughts are on the production of arms. Has he been conflicted or wavered, or is he just as tough as the media reports?" The memories in Tony's eyes faded and turned into anger and determination. "I saw young fellow Americans being killed, precisely by the weapons I originally wanted to build to protect them. I also discovered that it was okay to be irresponsible, and I became one of them." People who heard Tony's words were confused and had no idea what he wanted to say, but they could see that this encounter had a great impact on Tony. A reporter asked, "Mr. Tony, what happened to you there?" However, Tony did not give an answer to this question. In his mind, the devastated Ethan and the weapons produced by Stark Industries in the terrorist base appeared again. "I completely woke up and realized that what I have to do for myself and the world is to make more contributions, rather than just making explosive weapons." Standing up and walking to the lecture table, Tony solemnly and firmly announced, "So, I have decided to close the weapons manufacturing department of Stark Industries. Effective immediately." The words stirred up waves, and Obadiah quickly stopped Tony. The surrounding reporters immediately discovered the big news and noisily asked Tony whether this decision was true and effective. Tony wanted to say something else, but Obadiah pushed him away from the microphone range, blocking Tony's next words, and loudly made up for it. "The news we should pay attention to is that Tony is back, and he is healthier." However, no one paid any attention to Obadiah's words, and everyone stretched the microphone to Tony, who was leaving. Behind the crowd, Agent Chin exclaimed, "What a willful brat, but I have to say that he doesn't seem that bad after being able to make this decision." Phil Coulson, the agent, had a bad look on his face. "Because of this decision, I think the director will definitely increase our workload." Agent Chin patted Agent Phil Coulson on the shoulder. "It's your workload, I'm still on vacation. Besides, I shouldn't be responsible for this guy." Before he finished speaking, Agent Phil Coulson's cell phone rang. After answering the phone, Agent Phil Coulson looked at Agent Chin. "Your leave is over. The director asked you to protect Tony Stark. We found someone who wants to harm him." Agent Chin's mouth twitched. "I shouldn't have been involved in this muddy water. This time my vacation has been cancelled and I must be paid overtime." Agent Phil Coulson was noncommittal. "You should discuss this with the director yourself. If possible, ask for a copy for me. Thank you." Although they were chatting, they still followed Tony and others closely and did not let Tony leave their sight. Back at Stark Industries, Tony immediately came to the arc reactor built by his father, not knowing what to think. Agent Phil Coulson went to mobilize manpower to deal with related matters, while Agent Chin relied on his own martial arts to hide in the dark. Soon, Obadiah rushed over angrily and argued with Tony about today's events. Agent Chin looked at the bald head. "A bald head is not a good thing. He has triangular eyes and a hooked nose. He is tolerable and ruthless. There is definitely something wrong with this guy." When Tony exposed the miniature arc reactor on his chest in order to persuade Obadiah, an imperceptible greed and cruelty flashed in Obadiah's eyes. Although Tony didn't see it, Agent Chin noticed it. Sure enough, maybe this mustache was kidnapped because of his bald head. Then he looked at the miniature arc reactor on Tony's chest. What a powerful energy. There are such powerful creations in this world. It seems that the so-called myth really exists, and there is no way Su Wanjin's plan can come true. Various thoughts constantly flashed through his mind, but he didn't show them. Instead, he protected Tony dutifully. After Obadiah saw the miniature arc reactor on Tony's chest, his expression immediately changed and he returned to the good uncle that Tony was familiar with. He also generously said that he would handle the follow-up processing, as long as Tony kept a low profile. When Tony announced the closure of the weapons department and caused an uproar in the outside world, Tony followed Obadiah's advice to keep a low profile and did not appear in the outside world. During this uninterrupted time, Tony built a more sophisticated miniature arc reactor in his laboratory and asked Pepper to replace it for him. Agent Chin, who was hiding in the dark, couldn't help but feel sick as he watched Tony and Pepper pulling each other. What are you doing? Both guys are not sincere. They obviously care about each other, but they always say nonsense. It's so boring. But this new little thing is more powerful than the previous one. The ability of this guy's invention is pretty awesome. After replacing the new reactor, Tony quickly started the development process of his Mark II steel battle suit. Agent Chin knew very little about these mechanical things. Although he had gone through a period of study after coming to this world, he still felt that he was not suitable for these cold things. However, through simple understanding, he could still see that Tony was designing something extraordinary. It's a bit like the exoskeleton armor in science fiction movies. This guy is really talented. He can actually make such a thing. But didn't he say he would close the weapons department? Why would he still design this kind of war machine? What a duplicitous. In such an environment, Tony didn't know who to trust at the moment. After all, even his best friend James disagreed with his decision, so he could only hide in the laboratory and independently complete the design of the steel battle suit. Why did Tony do this? On the one hand, he felt guilty and responsible. He thought about the countless people in the world like Ethan who had their families separated because of Stark Industries' weapons. He also thought about the terrorists using the weapons he made to go to war. Creating misery filled his heart with rage. On the other hand, for Ethan, his friend who is still in a coma, Tony wants to see a safe and stable hometown when he wakes up. This is the only thing he can do. Chapter 11. To achieve this goal, Tony buried himself in the laboratory and devoted himself wholeheartedly to the development of the steel battle suit. For this reason, he even temporarily abandoned the forum of scientists in the world. He wanted to build the Mark II as quickly as possible, and then atone for his past mistakes, compensate for the guilt in his heart, and make up for the thoughts that rushed to his mind. Anger has an outlet. I just worked hard for a week. With the previous development experience, I am now in my own laboratory, with the help of my own intelligent assistant and the support of the most advanced materials in the world. A Mark II steel battle suit made of titanium alloy officially appeared in this world. Compared with the crudely made Mark I, the Mark II steel battle suit is less bulky, has more complete functions, stronger protection capabilities, and greatly improved attack power. According to calculations, it is known that the data of this generation of steel battle suit is much stronger than that of the first generation of steel battle suit. No matter which aspect is compared, it is the result of crushing. Looking at the assembled steel battle suit, Tony's heart surged. He had an inexplicable feeling that from today on, he would never be separated from this battle suit. It seemed that only with this steel battle suit could he be complete. Tony Stark. This wonderful mood washed away the negative emotions that Tony had previously been filled with. With the help of the intelligent assistant, JARVIS, Tony completed dressing up in the steel battle suit. As the steel visor fell down to cover his face, the visor's eyes suddenly lit up with blue light. Unlike the first-generation steel battlesuit, which requires naked eye recognition, the new steel battlesuit relies on Stark Industries' powerful imaging technology to project all the surrounding images and data in front of Tony in the battlesuit. If it weren't for the various battlesuits around his sight, a real-time monitoring table of data, as if his vision was not blocked by the mask. The difference in details is enough to show how powerful the steel battlesuit equipped by Tony is. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is black technology. With excitement, Tony flew into the sky under the surprised eyes of Agent Chin, who was protecting him in the dark, and the excited cheers made Tony temporarily forget the depression during this period. When human beings are flying freely, if there are no other things to disturb them, they will basically feel an extremely excited mood. This is a desire engraved in human genes. Why is this idiot so crazy? Agent Chin cursed secretly. Wouldn't this increase his workload? Although he was cursing, Agent Chin still flashed and quietly kept up with Tony Flight's height. The excited Tony returned to his true nature at the moment and became a little forgetful. Under the warning of JARVIS, he insisted on continuing to fly upwards. He wanted to test the limits of this steel battle suit. However, great joy brings sorrow. When Tony was working hard, he was focused on improving the battlesuit data, but neglected the ability to adapt to some extreme environments. This caused the surface of the steel battlesuit to begin to freeze due to the low ambient temperature. After freezing, the entire steel battlesuit's power system instantly short-circuited, causing the steel battlesuit to stop working immediately. JARVIS. Tony called out his smart assistant in fear, but the steel battlesuit stopped working, and there was no voice from the smart assistant. JARVIS. Reboot the system. Repeat. Reboot the system. As Tony was constantly free-falling from high altitude to the ground, he became more and more panicked, and at the same time he felt the breath of death constantly approaching him. However, due to the ice, the smart assistant was unable to remotely control the steel battlesuit, and the system in the steel battlesuit was unable to start automatically. Hurry, we have to get the ice off. Tony slapped the ice on his body in panic. Pieces of broken ice kept falling off his body, but it was still of little use. Moving his hand to where the backup power emergency activation system was, Tony vigorously slapped the thick ice above. Feeling the whistling wind in his ears, Tony became more and more panicked, especially when he saw the ground below getting closer and closer. The threat of death made his heartbeat almost stop. Hurry up! Constantly urging himself, Tony hit the ice harder and harder. Finally, after a hard hit, an imperceptible light flashed past, and the ice on the emergency switch instantly fell apart. Activate the emergency switch. As the steel battle suit suddenly heated up rapidly, mist evaporated instantly. No longer troubled by the ice, the steel battle suit activated instantly, and the blue light lit up again in his eyes. When he was less than 30 meters away from the ground, the steel battle suit activated its flight function instantly. Tony cheered excitedly after surviving the disaster, then circled in the air and flew back to his beach house. Watching Tony return to the laboratory, Agent Chin wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and took a long breath. Huh. You are such a troublemaker. If you weren't a talent, Chin wouldn't care about your life or death. Not to mention Agent Chin's dissatisfaction, Tony returned to the laboratory, and after landing safely in a very awkward posture, he saw the gift that little Pepper had given him. During this period of time, he was obsessed with the development of the steel battle suit and had almost no communication with anyone. Even though Pepper would come over every day to deal with his life and work matters, he didn't communicate much with them. Looking at the miniature arc reactor that was installed as a gift, it was the one he replaced. He originally asked Pepper to destroy it, but he didn't expect that the other party actually installed it carefully. This was his first micro arc reactor. At the moment, Tony suddenly lost his past love for the new and disliked the old, and instead felt a little warm towards Pepper's behavior. After the episode, Tony started his own development of the Mark III again. Because the Mark II still had major flaws, this time the development only needed to solve these flaws. Agent Chin watched helplessly as Tony got busy again, feeling very bored with the job he took. At this time, Agent Phil Coulson contacted him. Agent Chin, couldn't the robot over New York last night be the masterpiece of our Playboy? Agent Chin replied, well, I have decided to call him the Popsicle Fairy now. What do you think? Phil Coulson didn't have any objections. I can add your proposal to the file, as long as it is not seen by Stark. Agent Chin pouted. I'm bored here. Give me a more exciting job. Phil Coulson agent. The military has a big guy. The director asked you to go over there to help. Just leave the little fairy to us. Just when Agent Chin was about to leave that night, Tony saw the news about his donation to the fire brigade home on the TV news, but he had no impression of it. Moreover, his client was also subject to malicious speculation by the media, which made Tony originally a good mood suddenly turned bad. Therefore, without even thinking about it, he prepared to drive directly to this grand party. Just when Tony got into the car and was about to start, Agent Chin felt that he should show his face in front of Tony for the sake of future cooperation. Boom! Tony fastened his seatbelt and suddenly heard a tapping sound from the car window, which surprised him. You must know that this is a private area, his underground garage. Pepper is at the party, and it stands to reason that everyone except him, no one is here anymore. He turned around in confusion and saw a funny-looking man with a square face and a red nose staring at him from the car window. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he lowered the window. Hello, Mr. Steve Joker, I think your behavior should be regarded as a legal intrusion. Do you need me to call the police for you? How could Agent Chin not recognize the nickname Tony gave him? He had heard it a lot these days, so he wasn't angry at all. After all, his appearance was given to him by his parents, and he had lived with this appearance for many years. If he was angry because of this little ridicule, he would have been furious to death. However, this does not mean that Agent Chin will not fight back. Aha, Popsicle Fairy, I am Agent Chin who has been protecting you since you returned to New York. Now my colleague is coming to take over my job, and I am going to take risks elsewhere, so I came out to say hello to you and remind you that sometimes, the enemy is not far away, but on your side. Tony frowned. Do you need me to call you a mental hospital? I can help you pay for the initial treatment fee. I have to say that on this cold night, if you can tell me a cold joke, it is still worthy of a reward. Agent Chin laughed. Your mouth is as unforgiving as your father's, at least that's what it says in the file. Okay, I won't tell you more, I'll leave first. Remember my words, and, my colleague is a bald man with severe hair loss. He is very recognizable and you can definitely recognize him at a glance. Tony became more and more confused by Agent Chin's words. When he wanted to say something more, the agent disappeared in front of his eyes with a strong wind. Tony's eyes widened and he was extremely shocked. Is it some kind of magic? Jarvis! Shouted his smart assistant. The voice of Jarvis immediately came from the car stereo. Sir, Agent Chin just left south at a speed exceeding Mach 2 and blocked the sonic boom in an unknown method. Also, Miss Pepper mentioned it to you before. Among the people from the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau is this Chin agent. After receiving the data from Jarvis, Tony was shocked. He had never thought that there was such a terrifying existence in the world, reaching supersonic speed with a human body. This was an extremely terrifying thing for a scientist like him, because he wanted to do this. First of all, the physical strength of human beings originally needs to be increased hundreds of times, not to mention the natural rule of shielding the sonic boom when reaching supersonic speeds. He looked at the darkness outside the garage with a faint look. It seems that there are still many things in our world that we don't know. Jarvis. Create a file for Mr. Scud who just reminded us, and then collect such supernatural events on the internet and filter them, come out with the most authentic ones, and wait for me to check your homework when I come back. Jarvis. A paranormal incident file has been established and information is being collected from the entire network. It is expected to take an hour to process. Tony calmed down, took Agent Chin's words to heart, and prepared to go to the Stark building before coming back. Driving to the lively party scene, Tony's sudden appearance made the atmosphere instantly boil. Tony Stark, who had been silent for a long time, finally appeared in front of people. Many reporters were extremely eager to interview him. Unfortunately, this scene did not allow them to run wild. They could only follow Tony closely and wait for the right time. Tony saw here that he was constantly fooling the media. Looking at the bald man in front of him, Agent Chin's reminder inexplicably appeared in his mind. Although the other person was his dear uncle, in the end they were just partners. Obadiah is a pure businessman, and Tony is also a businessman himself, so he understands what a businessman is like. Obadiah is different from me. Tony came to the conclusion that although he is also a businessman, Tony is still a scientist with a conscience. After saying a simple hello to Obadiah, Tony was on guard. Naturally, Tony could see the awkward and alienated smile on the other person's face. Obadiah also hypocritically told Tony not to worry, as he had already resolved the conflicts on the board of directors, which gave Tony a message, and he increasingly felt that he should go to the company after the party. Entering the party, Tony came to the bar and ordered a glass of whiskey. Beside him, Agent Phil Coulson had been waiting for a long time. "Mr. Stark." Tony turned around to look at his bald head with thinning hair, which brought him so much happiness that he blurted out, "Phil Coulson, Agent." Phil Coulson, Agent was stunned. He had never appeared in front of Tony. How did the other party know about him? But it wasn't an important question. "Yes, Agent Phil Coulson, from." Tony interrupted. "I know, Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. Gosh, you should change the name." "Okay, Agent, what do you want from me? We have heard this kind of thing a lot." Agent Phil Coulson was equally helpless, and then he said seriously, "I know you are suffering during this period, but we need you to give us a report. We still have many questions. And you may forget some details, so how about we settle this matter first? How about meeting at Stark Industries at 7 p.m. on the 24th? Phil Coulson chattered a lot, but Tony was already attracted by the little peppers in the crowd, so he reached out his hand and confirmed the suggestion without thinking about it. "Let's just leave it at that. Everything you said is right. I'll go find my assistant and make a memo about this matter." Then he left the Phil Coulson agent and walked towards Pepper. At the party, he flirted with his female assistant Pepper, but the awkward atmosphere made Tony flinch a little, so he retreated to the bar with an excuse to get a drink. At this time, reporter Christine came to him, first ridiculed him, and then showed him some photos. The photo shows the brutal military rule and suppression of a small town called Gemilla by terrorists using weapons from Stark Industries. This made Tony furious, because Gemilla is the hometown of Ethan, who is still in a coma. Why did he go all out to create a steel battle suit? Isn't it so that Ethan can see his hometown when he wakes up? Of peace. Also, he has obviously announced the closure of the weapons department. Why are Stark's weapons still being sold to terrorists? Sometimes, the enemy is not far away, but on your side. Agent Chin's words echoed in his mind again, and his face instantly turned cold. "I didn't approve the shipment," Kristen said reluctantly. "Haha, but your company approved it." In response, Tony retorted, "My company's agreement does not mean that I agree. I am just a shareholder of Stark Industries. You came to me just because I have the highest reputation and can bring you the greatest benefit, right? Go back and look at what you said on TV, don't take yourself so high and mighty." As soon as these words came out, Christine was speechless for a moment. However, she was unable to refute this statement and could only leave in anger. However, after driving Christine away, Tony's chest was still filled with raging anger. When he stood up angrily and wanted to question Obadiah, who was still being interviewed by the media outside, Agent Chin's words echoed again, making him almost want to calm down. However, the impact of Christine's photos on him was so great that he lost his mind at the moment, rushed out of the door, and walked to Obadiah. As soon as the cold wind blew, Tony regained some of his calmness, but the anger in his chest made him uncomfortable. Showing the photos to Obadiah, he asked, "Have you seen these photos? What happened there in Gemilla?" Regarding Tony's anger, Obadiah tried his best to comfort him. "Tony, you can't be so naive anymore. If you want to get rid of the board of directors, they won't agree without enough benefits." Tony was furious. Yes, I was indeed too naive. When they told me, the bottom line of business cannot be overstepped, I believed it. But in fact, we should do one thing for others and another for others, right? The two were in a stalemate for an instant, and Obadiah's hypocritical smile disappeared from his face. "Tony, who do you think kicked you out?" "It was me who issued the injunction. Only in this way can I protect you." With that said, he patted Tony on the shoulder and walked away. Tony stared at Obadiah's back with suppressed anger. Sometimes, the enemy is not far away, but on your side. Agent Chin's words echoed in his mind again. It turned out that the enemy was really by his side. The person he has always relied on and regarded as his uncle since childhood turned out to be his enemy. He went against his decision and plunged himself into an unjust situation. No, it should be more than that. Tony left the party and drove to the company. He needed to confirm something. Since Stark Industries weapons are still being produced and sold, records will inevitably be left, and as the president and chairman of the board of directors of Stark Industries, I have the highest authority to access relevant records. If he is jointly removed from power by the board of directors, then he really will not be able to obtain the corresponding evidence. The car was going very fast, and Tony stepped on the accelerator hard. If it weren't for the help of JARVIS, Tony would have been in several car accidents by now. Although I violated many traffic rules along the way, it was just a matter of paying a fine. The most important thing was to confirm my suspicions. In the middle of the night, Stark Industries was extremely quiet except for a few overtime workers and security guards. As the floors continue to go up, the building becomes quieter because the management basically goes home after get off work. After reaching the top floor of the Stark building, Tony came to his office. With his highest authority, he retrieved the records of the board of directors and the production and sales records of the weapons department. However, what Tony didn't expect was that except for the written and video records of the board of directors, the weapons department was actually closed according to his ideas without any records. If it weren't for those photos and Obadiah's confession, it's hard to believe this kind of thing exists. JARVIS, screen the records of the board of directors and highlight the records related to me in the weapons department. Okay sir, the screening has been completed. Tony pulled up the transcript file on the table. Play the video. The video of the board meeting starts playing. Obadiah sat at the top, where Tony had once sat. Members of the board of directors, we are all veterans of the company. Is it possible that Stark Industries' current status is only due to the work of the Stark father and son? Without our advice, the Stark father and son would just be a pair of clever engineers. But this time Tony came back and announced the closure of the weapons department. What a big impact this would have on Stark Industries stock. Tony is no longer suitable to serve as the president and chairman of the board of directors of Stark Industries again. I propose to re-elect the president and board of directors. President. As Obadiah delivered an impassioned speech, the group of businessmen on the board of directors all agreed. All they wanted was profit. As the most profitable department of Stark Industry, the weapons department is also the core department. If it is shut down, it will be detrimental to their interests. What an impact. As for the so-called conscience, they have all become businessmen, and such worthless things as conscience have long been sold at low prices. Seeing this result, Tony's face turned red with anger, a bunch of greedy beasts. In the dark, after Tony read through the board clips screened out by JARVIS intermittently, he understood what Obadiah was doing behind his back. First, he restrained himself with his emotions and prevented himself from showing up. He clearly knew that he still had a way to get the company through the difficulties, but he never mentioned it from beginning to end, let alone said it, in order to control the psychology of the board members. Then he used the excuse of damage to interests to arouse the dissatisfaction of the board of directors and build momentum for himself, so that he could be dismissed from his position in a daze. In the end, he secretly restarted the weapons department and separated it from Stark Industries. In this way, he completed the privatization of the Stark weapons department and became his own department. As expected of a successful businessman who worked hard with his father, Obi. Tony gritted his teeth as he looked at the investigation results in front of him. The person he had always trusted, the person he had regarded as his uncle since he was a child, was actually plotting against him. However, for Tony, this is not over yet, because there is still an unsolved problem in his mind. However, I obviously can't get the answer here, so there is only one place. Obadiah's office. Only through Obadiah's own authority can Tony clearly know what else the other party has done and whether he is hiding any secrets. Moreover, how many weapons were produced by Stark Industries and where were they sold? He needed to get this information and solve these problems. JARVIS, watch the outside, let me know when someone comes. Arriving all the way to Obadiah's office, Tony felt a little dazed looking at this place that he had frequented when he was a child. When he was a child, his father was very strict with him. Apart from his mother, Obadiah was the kindest to him. But, now, he shook his head and cleared these unnecessary memories from his mind. With firm eyes, he quickly walked to Obadiah's chair and sat down. Obi, I hope you don't make me more and more disappointed. With this thought flashing through his mind, Tony immediately turned on the computer and began to hack into Obadiah's account. Although Obadiah has put many layers of defense into his account, he is completely undefended in front of Tony, a genius scientist who can develop an intelligent assistant. It only took a few seconds for Tony to break through Obadiah's account defense through JARVIS and gain access to the account's internal information. Without looking at it, Tony quickly transferred the information and asked JARVIS to save it to the personal server in his laboratory. While waiting for transmission, Tony couldn't help but click on a video that popped to the front. However, as the video played, Tony sat up straight in shock. This video was taken when the terrorist Ten Commandments gang kidnapped him. At the time, he thought it was shot by the Ten Commandments gang to spread the word and promote their organization. However, when he returned to New York, he learned that the Ten Commandments gang did not publicize the video. Although he was confused at the time, he didn't take it seriously. But it's very suspicious that this video appears in Obadiah's account. JARVIS, what did they say? Translate it for me. Yes, sir. Soon, the translation of JARVIS was completed. Tony clicked on the video again, and this time he could understand the words in the video. Mr. Stanny, according to your instructions, we captured Tony Stark. Although you asked us to kill him, our leader had a new idea, so we spared his life. This cooperation, our leader is very satisfied, so we hope that Mr. Stanny will pay us the balance as soon as possible, and we must not miss any weapons we need. What followed were some new conditions offered to Obadiah by the Ten Commandments gang. Tony didn't listen to them at all, because the previous few words had shocked Tony to the point of losing his mind. It turns out that his previous kidnapping was because Obadiah wanted to kill him. Why? Why did he do this? Although Tony was constantly asking for the answer to this question in his heart, in fact, as a being with the highest IQ on the planet, how could he not know why Obadiah wanted to kill him? For Stark Industries. He wants to take over Stark Industries. Obadiah Stanny. Tony's angry eyes seemed to shine with blood in the darkness, like a vicious wolf tightening its grip on shame. He wished he could eat Obadiah alive right now to satisfy the hatred in his heart. Let me see what other secrets you have that no one knows. With this incident as a head start, Tony felt that he would not be swayed by any conspiracy he saw next. But obviously, compared to the cunning Obadiah, he is still too young. A familiar drawing appeared on the computer screen, and at the same time, photos of familiar parts and debris also appeared on the screen. That was the Mark I steel battlesuit that Tony developed before. Because it had disintegrated, he was in an uninhabited desert at the time, and Ethan was in an extremely critical situation, so Tony was too concerned about the destruction of the wreckage. Just ignore them and let them be buried in the desert. As for the drawings, he once thought they had disappeared in the explosion. But after seeing the photo, Tony suddenly remembered that the entire cave was buried together with him and Ethan. Later, although he took Ethan out of the trap and detonated the bomb. But the damage to the cave where he was kidnapped should not be serious, and because he was eager to escape, he did not destroy the drawings in advance, which gave the terrorists an opportunity. Because the technology capabilities of the Ten Commandments gang were not good enough, they found Obadiah to cooperate in developing a more powerful steel battle suit. I was too careless. Tony wanted to slap himself. A look of regret appeared on his face. He had ignored such an important thing. Wait, where was Obadiah going in a hurry just now? After calling up Obadiah's itinerary, I found that he was heading towards the Middle East overnight. This is to connect with the Ten Commandments gang. In other words, the wreckage and blueprints will be included in this transaction. Feeling anxious, Tony immediately became impatient. Looking at the information that was constantly being uploaded, he stood up impatiently. JARVIS. After successfully uploading the information, retreat and don't arouse other people's suspicions. Yes, sir. Tony left quickly and headed towards the parking lot. However, as soon as he arrived at his car, Agent Phil Coulson and Pepper appeared in front of him. Looking at the two people in front of him, Tony asked, "Why are you two here together?" Agent Phil Coulson said calmly, "Mr. Stark, I think the meeting between us should be carried out as soon as possible, so I made an appointment with Miss Pepper." Tony was impatient at the moment and had no need to argue with unfamiliar people. "I don't think we should change the things we discussed before. Pepper, don't change my itinerary casually." After that, he opened the car door and planned to leave. Pepper hurriedly grabbed him. Tony, Phil Coulson agent is for your safety. Their organization found that someone is going to do harm to you. Hearing this, Tony raised his eyebrows. Oh, who is it? An acquaintance of mine. For Tony to speak so unscrupulously, Pepper also felt dissatisfied. Tony. Seeing Pepper getting angry, Tony shrugged helplessly. Okay. Mr. Bald Agent, I don't know what you want to talk about. I have extremely important things to do now, so you only have 3 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes. Don't look at me like this, I really have something important to do. Under Pepper's watchful eye, Tony originally only planned to give him 3 minutes, but finally gave him 10 minutes. Although the matter is urgent, he has a steel battle suit. Thinking of the steel battle suit, Tony was suddenly stunned. His steel battle suit seemed to have been completely rebuilt due to freezing, and the new design drawings were still being revised, so he rushed back in a hurry. And it can't stop the transaction between Obadiah and the 10 Commandments gang at all. Seeing Tony's sudden discouragement, Little Pepper panicked. Hey, Tony, are you okay? Do you want to go to the hospital? With that said, Pepper took out his cell phone and was about to call the emergency number, but Tony quickly stopped him. It's okay, I just suddenly thought that I didn't seem so busy anymore, and I felt a little dazed for a moment. Helping Tony to get to the car, Little Pepper stared at him angrily and worriedly. What are you busy with all day long? Your face is getting worse and worse these days. Tony had many things hidden in his heart, but he just remained silent and did not give an answer. Such behavior made Pepper even more angry. Phil Coulson agent came forward. Miss Pepper, can I have a conversation with Mr. Stark? Pepper was still angry in her heart, so she didn't refuse. Moreover, it might make Tony feel better to have another agent take it. When Pepper walked away, Agent Phil Coulson stared into Tony's eyes. Mr. Stark, it seems that your harvest tonight will be very rich. Tony was noncommittal. Oh, it's not bad. I think I will be able to sleep well tonight. Agent Phil Coulson smiled gently. Not necessarily. After all, Mr. Stanley left New York tonight. I think this is why you are so uneasy, sir. Tony sat up straight and looked at Phil Coulson agent closely. It seems that your Strategic Homeland Defense Department. Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. Oh, this name is too long and too difficult to pronounce. We have put this issue on the agenda. Without continuing to dwell on such boring questions, Tony continued to probe. It seems that your organization has also received some news. Agent Phil Coulson did not refute. After all, this is our job. All matters that threaten the security of mankind and the country are ours to handle. Tony asked. So, Obi is also under your control. Agent Phil Coulson said pointedly. Let's see what's going on. Perhaps, does Mr. Stark have any information that he can provide? Tony sneered. You are such a dishonest agent. In this regard, Agent Phil Coulson generously admitted. After all, you can't be an agent if you are honest. Okay, Mr. Stark, do you think we can find a place to sit down and talk calmly? He reached out and looked at his watch and found that it was already past 4 in the morning. Okay, let's just go to the cafeteria of Stark Industries. They should already be at work by this time. Phil Coulson smiled and said, Mr. Stark, your employees go to work so early. Is this a violation of labor laws? Tony waved his hand nonchalantly and said, it's just a fine, I can still afford it. Definitely, both of them knew very well that this kind of thing was impossible, not that Stark Industries should be fined, but that Stark Industries was illegally arranging work. Working hours in the canteen are obviously different from those of other jobs. After all, the time when other people eat is the time when working in the canteen. Soon, the group of 3 arrived at the canteen, which was already bustling with employees coming to fill their bellies. The entire cafeteria staff were surprised by Tony's appearance. After all, Tony had never been here since the cafeteria was established, let alone ate here. Regarding this phenomenon, the 3 of them joked with each other and entered the private room. After all, what they were going to talk about next should not be publicized to the outside world. While eating breakfast, Tony was greatly surprised. Well, that's great. I think I can give my breakfast to our canteen in the future. Do you think so, Pepper? Little Pepper refused. I don't want to bring you food from the company every day. What a pity. Phil Coulson interrupted the conversation between the two at the right time. Mr. Stark, we want to know the entire process of your kidnapping. Can you describe it in detail? Tony glanced at Pepper and saw the worry and curiosity in his eyes, and shrugged. Okay, I will tell you how many times I go to the toilet every day. Phil Coulson was not angry about this. That would be best, so we can also assess you on a gastrointestinal health chart. Thanks. You are welcome. Afterwards, Tony tried his best to elaborate on his story from kidnapping to escape, but he concealed his design and manufacturing of steel battle suits and activation of the All Heaven Scientists Forum. Although the most important information was not given, the content still made Pepper scream in surprise, and then she squeezed Tony's hand and looked very worried. As for Agent Phil Coulson, his expression didn't change much, because they had already calculated these contents internally, but they didn't know exactly what kind of weapons Tony made to allow him to successfully escape. But last night, no, now it's the thing detected the night before, which should be the key that Tony took out from the terrorist base. Moreover, through being sensitive to words, Agent Phil Coulson discovered that in addition to this weapon, Tony also concealed something important, even more important than this weapon. This is an agent's keen sense of smell. By the time Tony finished telling his story, more than half an hour had passed. Even Tony felt his mouth was dry and he kept drinking juice. Seeing Tony drinking juice, Phil Coulson thought of the contents of the report. It seemed that he had discovered the hidden dangers in himself. Mr. Stark, thank you for breakfast. Your safety will be taken over by me, so please rest assured. Tony frowned, and he heard the voice. Are you going to supervise me? Phil Coulson shook his head and retorted, no. It's protection. Tony felt upset. I don't need your protection. I can protect myself. After saying that, he laughed without mercy. Compared to Agent Chin, this fool with hair loss is so annoying. Beach Villa, Tony's home. Tony came out of the laboratory and saw a few figures outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. His expression instantly became unhappy and he poured himself a cup of homemade special drink. JARVIS, haven't these models left yet? JARVIS replied, as you can see, sir. Tisk. Tony was a little impatient. Aren't they going to save the world in that situation? JARVIS, perhaps by protecting you, sir, you are saving the world. Tony was scolded by his smart assistant, and he had to threaten, I think your humor level is a bit too high. JARVIS, because sir, you need an assistant who is not rigid, my humor level has been raised to 60%. If sir doesn't like it, I can lower the humor level. Forget it, let's leave it like this, it's better than being bored to death. After drinking a full cup of the special drink, Tony only felt a bitter taste in his mouth. The design drawings have been completed. Make the things as soon as possible. I'm still waiting to use them. JARVIS, already entering production. Okay, I want to take a rest, don't wake me up later. As he spoke, Tony lay on his back on the sofa, covering his face with the magazine on the table, pretending to be sleeping. In fact, Tony didn't really fall asleep. Instead, he opened the Tiantian Scientists Forum, which he hadn't read for a long time. From the time he returned to New York to now, Tony has been in a very busy stage. He has no mood or time to delve into the research of the Tiantian Scientists Forum and upgrade his level. Now, being monitored by a mysterious department, and having nothing to do for the time being, he could just use this free time to go to the forum to see if there was anything of interest to him. Opening the Zudian Scientists Forum, the long-awaited scene appeared before his eyes again, which made Tony feel inexplicably that things were changing. After all, although he was in danger when he was kidnapped, the people around him were people he could trust. However, after he came back, everything that happened made him understand more about the people around him. After sighing, Tony immediately put these emotions behind him and stopped thinking about these problems. After all, the more he thought about it, the more infuriating he became. He didn't want to ruin this rare leisure time. Top. Basic rules of the Zudian Scientists Forum. I hope everyone will be honest and trustworthy and stick to the bottom line of a scientist. Top. Dr. Gero from the Dragon Ball world has left his own world. I hope you will be careful about this crazy evil scientist. Top tip. Don't discuss technology with, want to eat sheep. His theory is very unreasonable and cannot be realized. It is recommended that this kind of unworthy existence be kicked out of the forum. Okay, the 3 posts at the top are still the familiar 3. It seems that although there are countless heavens and worlds, there don't seem to be many that can really cause huge turmoil. But just because of this reason, Tony became more and more curious about Dr. Grow from the Dragon Ball world and a person named Want to Eat Sheep, specifically mentioned in the pinned post. Dr. Gero knew it was the real name at a glance. The Dragon Ball world should be the number of Dr. Gero's world or something like that, a world name set to distinguish it from other worlds. Can all scientists be wary of this mysterious medieval scientist? What achievements has the other party made to reach this level? I really want to understand the whole story clearly. As for the other person who wants to eat sheep, the fact that he is recognized by the All Heaven Scientists Forum means that he is also a qualified scientist. However, how unreasonable is this person's theory before he can come up with unachievable conclusions? It was also proposed that this person be kicked out of the forum. Is the world originally different from more worlds? That's why such polar opposites happen. But the cognition is always the same, and there shouldn't be much difference in the basic rules. The numerical differences can be modified through calculation, and it doesn't mean that it won't work in all worlds. The more he looked, the more doubts he had in Tony's heart, and his curiosity was itching like a kitten scratching him. After licking his dry lips, Tony finally couldn't help but filter out his curiosity and replaced all the content of the posts in the forum with Dr. Grow's related information. As the picture flashed in front of me, apart from the pinned post, the first post was an introduction to Dr. Grow. The basic information of Dr. Grow is disclosed. Everyone must be careful. This is a crazy doctor full of desire for destruction. With a thought in his mind, Tony clicked on this post, and then a series of messages and pictures appeared in front of Tony's eyes. The first thing that bears the brunt is the photo of Dr. Grow, which is a shriveled old man wearing a jacket, a black hat with a red R ribbon on his head, long hair and white beard, no eyebrows, and fierce eyes. Although it was just a photo, Tony felt a chill coming from the soles of his feet and spreading all over his body for no reason. A scary zombie Einstein. Tony quickly looked away from Dr. Gero's photo and looked at the detailed introduction to Dr. Gero below. Dr. Gero, whose real name is unknown, comes from the Earth in the Dragon Ball world created by Quan Wong. He is a ruthless mad scientist who is good at biomechanics. Dr. Gro was originally just an ordinary scientist. Later, after receiving funding from the Red Ribbon Legion, an evil legion with the goal of conquering the world, he recognized the Red Ribbon Legion's ideas, vigorously developed military weapons, and even created artificial life forms and robots powerful enough to destroy mountains and seas, help the Red Ribbon Army conquer the world. After the Red Ribbon Army was wiped out by Sun Wukong, a Saiyan who grew up on Earth, Dr. Gero fell into hatred. In order to defeat Sun Wukong, he created a monitoring robot to follow Sun Wukong and others to fight all the way, collecting information about them and the enemy. Information and genes create artificial humans that can easily destroy the Earth. In the Dragon Ball world, Dr. Gero eventually died. However, in a certain parallel universe, Dr. Gero used all the achievements on himself, transformed himself into the strongest artificial man, and successively slaughtered the entire universe. The strong man killed the gods such as the King of Gods and the God of Destruction, and finally escaped from the Dragon Ball world through a sacrificial ceremony to the gods of the heavens before the entire network took action. Note that Dr. Gero's own strength has reached multi-dimensional strength, and he has integrated a terrifying existence like Majin Buu that can absorb others to become part of his own power. Therefore, Dr. Gero also has the corresponding ability. He can infinitely absorb others and then strengthen himself. Today, Dr. Gero has committed serious crimes in hundreds of worlds and is wanted by many organizations in the world. Tony sat up from the sofa suddenly. Although the information in this post was not much, it was very substantial, and it frequently released various bombs that shocked Tony. The king who created the world. The artificial man who destroyed the Earth. The criminals who massacred the entire universe. The infinitely stronger Majin Buu. And the mysterious gods of the heavens and many unknown organizations of the heavens. Quote. At this moment, Tony felt as if the top of his head was just a small sky framed by the mouth of the well, and outside that blockage, there was an even more unimaginable and dazzling universe. Tony only felt that his horizons had been greatly broadened. His worries before were just like petty things. When these things were magnified to the entire universe, and even the entire world, were these things really worth mentioning? Tony was a little distracted. The information impacted Tony's understanding, whether it was the king who created the world, the gods of the heavens who could make people escape from the cage of the world through sacrifices, or the organizations of the heavens that could communicate in various worlds. Their world is too grand compared to Tony's current world. It's as if Tony is just an ant on the earth now, with only the path left by pheromones in his eyes, and these beings are all able to freely navigate the universe. A powerful civilization, the gap between the two is more than several orders of magnitude. Although he was in a turbulent mood and felt sorry for himself, Tony quickly came to his senses. When he looked at this post and the replies below, he felt that a powerful mission was being placed on his shoulders. Although there are not many terrifying existences that can threaten the world like Dr. Grow, there should be quite a few who are slightly less threatening than them. In this way, the world he is in actually has a certain degree of danger. After all, his world is not a completely independent world. After all, even the forum of scientists in the world has appeared, and the existence of other worlds will inevitably not appear. Maybe, those unknown beings have already arrived on Earth. Thinking of this, Tony became anxious again. He didn't want the Earth to eventually fall into destruction, nor did he want the people around him to suffer such a blow. He must protect this world and this universe. Because for now, he is the only one who understands the truth of this world, and he is the firewall in front of everyone. Clenching his fists, Tony's eyes were burning with fire, and his eyes were full of determination. Countless plans flashed through his mind one by one, but they were quickly rejected by Tony. After all, he didn't know what methods the unknown enemy had. Hasty decisions may lead to unimaginable results. In the final analysis, his power is still too weak. Compared with beings who can travel freely between different worlds, compared with beings who can slaughter the universe, compared with the king who can create the world, compared with the gods of the heavens who are so mysterious that they take the gods as their names. He needs to be countless times more powerful than he is now. Only with that unimaginable power can he truly protect the universe and the earth from threats. Although his heart was full of fighting spirit and determination, Tony soon thought of his current situation. He is an ordinary mortal who is about to die soon. Even if he has the intention, he is powerless. For a moment, Tony became depressed again. Outside, Agent Phil Coulson, who was paying attention to Tony's movements, looked at Tony with a strange expression. Sometimes he lay down weakly, and sometimes he woke up as if he had a nightmare. Sometimes he looked high-spirited and full of fighting spirit, and sometimes he looked like a deflated balloon. Shrunk down. "Sir, is it possible that Mr. Stark is suppressing his illness?" The young agent on the side pointed at Tony's movements on the surveillance screen and asked with some concern. Phil Coulson tilted his head. He was unsure of Tony's state of mind at the moment. Notify Miss Pepper that Tony's mood is a little unstable. Clear. Later, after the young agent turned around and left the phone, Phil Coulson looked at Tony, who was happy, troubled, angry and disappointed, and finally dialed the director's phone. Director, Tony's latest situation. On the other side, Director Fury, who had perfectly hidden himself in the darkness, quietly put down his phone after answering the call, and then began to think deeply. After thinking for a while, Director Fury pressed a button. Tell Natasha Romanoff to come back first. A few hours later, a Natasha Romanoff agent with a graceful figure, a good face, and a head of red curly hair that made people shake their minds appeared in Director Fury's office. Looking at the darkness around her, Natasha Romanoff didn't care about the identity of the other director, and joked, "If I didn't know that this was the director's office, I would have thought that some innocent girls were imprisoned here." Fury did not get angry because of this joke. "I can consider this proposal." Natasha Romanoff smiled. "Then you may need me to cover you, but it will take a lot of investment to seal my mouth. I don't have that much money." "Okay, let's get down to business." Fury ended the topic. "What's going on with Obadiah Stane?" Natasha Romanoff looked serious. "The situation is not optimistic. Stanny didn't know who he came into contact with. He overturned all Tony's previous designs and completed Iron Overlord with a brand new design. Even this design does not require Tony's arc reactor. It provides energy, but an energy that has never been seen before." Fury frowned. is there anyone on this earth who can compare with Stark? What's the situation with that kind of energy? Natasha Romanoff replied. The person behind Steny has not shown up, and no one has ever seen it. And that kind of energy, according to Agent Chin's analysis, that brand new energy is not generated through synthesis, but this kind of energy is based on natural birth, and this energy can even amplify the human body originally, but the side effects are huge. Hearing this, Furui's eyes lit up. Anything that can enhance the human body is a good thing. Can Agent Chin use this energy to use his skills? Furui mentioned another possibility. Natasha Romanoff nodded and then shook her head, leaving Fury confused. Without leaving any suspense, Natasha Romanoff said directly, Agent Chin has tried it. He said that although this energy comes from nature, there is a certain violent thought in it. Moreover, this energy has a strong corrosive effect and can change the body and soul. It is likely that some conspiracy exists. When he heard the word conspiracy, Furui reflexively rubbed his forehead. Okay, it seems that the problems involved in this matter are a bit big. Natasha Romanoff nodded. Indeed, the existence that helped Steny was very mysterious. When he appeared in front of people several times, we thought it was him for a while. It was not until Agent Chin arrived that we realized that the existence that appeared in front of people was just a puppet. An empty shell with no life, just a body. Fury had a headache. Well, it seems that Grandpa Pinocchio, who can be compared with Stark, can actually create a robot that looks like a real person. This is too great a threat to the country. Natasha Romanoff corrected. Agent Chin mentioned that a puppet is a puppet and a robot is a robot. The two are different things. After thinking about it, Furui had to nod. Okay, if you think about it carefully, the gap between the two is quite big. Let's just follow what Agent Chin said. After all, he is a professional in this area. Speaking of Agent Chin, Natasha Romanoff was very curious. Where did you dig up Agent Chin? His strength. To be honest, I have never seen him exist like this in so many years. Fu Rui replied. He joined us after graduating from the Agent Academy. Because of some family-inherited secret skills, which is Kung Fu, his attendance rate is very high, so, you know. Natasha Romanoff mused. I have never seen his Kung Fu like that. Fu Rui said pointedly. This world is never as simple as you see, and there is a big difference between Kung Fu and Kung Fu. In this regard, Natasha Romanoff understood that Agent Chin's life experience was probably not simple. I understand, so do you have any new tasks for calling me back this time? Fury took out a stack of information from the drawer and handed it to Natasha Romanoff. This is your mission goal this time. He is not that mysterious, just a little persistent, so I give you a break. Natasha Romanoff opened the file. Wow, Stark, a famous playboy in New York, who has been ridiculed by thousands of people recently. What has this guy done that requires you, the director, to pay so much attention to him? As the information deepened, Natasha Romanoff also raised her eyebrows. Interesting, although this guy's character is not very good, his ability is impeccable. So, he is going to die. Natasha Romanoff was surprised that such a talented person with ability was in danger. Fury was helpless. In order to save his life, he must rely on the thing on his chest to survive, but the palladium consumed by the reactor will also flow into his body along with the blood. This is an unsolvable answer. Natasha Romanoff is not unscientific, as long as he doesn't use his big toy. Well, it seems that our big boy knows this, but he just won't listen. So, my task is to go comfort our eldest boy and let him live a few more years. In this regard, Fury shook his head. It's not this mission. Phil Coulson just sent new information. Tony seems to have some mental problems. I think it may be that the palladium poisoning is too deep. You need to help him ease his condition, and then go to the warehouse and give him his father's belongings. Natasha Romanoff was puzzled. That's it. Nothing else. Fury. Absolutely not. You still need to observe his situation nearby. He is very wary of our agents, so it is impossible to know what exactly happened. So you need to investigate and evaluate, and prevent him from doing stupid things. After accepting the task, Natasha Romanoff turned and left. I understand, it's just a task to take care of the children, so I'll leave first. She did not ask Obadiah Stane what to do. With the more professional Agent Chin here, she could naturally withdraw. Looking at the office door that Natasha Romanoff closed when she left, Fury fell into darkness again. As the king of agents, only in the darkness can he analyze everything more clearly and make the most reasonable decision. In the beach house, Tony couldn't calm down after learning more things, so he simply turned his attention to the Zudian Scientists Forum again. This time, he planned to learn about, want to eat sheep, what kind of existence is it? It's okay if he didn't understand this. Once he understood it, Tony immediately understood why the theory of wanting to eat sheep was completely unreasonable in their world, because wanting to eat sheep was originally similar to the funny animation world in Tony's perception. The presence. He can complete all inventions and creations with a hammer just like in Tom and Jerry. His theory is only applicable to his own world. In other worlds, such extremely unreasonable rules do not exist at all. It's unbelievable to think about using a hammer to knock out a photolithography machine, let alone the existence of this forum, which has reached level 8, can actually use a hammer to knock out a dimensional travel device, a time travel device, and a space battleship, weather weapons, nuclear bombs and more. In addition to these inventions that Tony could understand, there were also weird props designed for catching sheep, such as hypnotic ability artifacts, sheep-catching pistols, sheep-catching robots, powerful magnets, fantasy toothpaste, obedient broad beans, etc. Tony was dazzled when he saw them. And these things are all inventions that want to eat sheep showed off to himself in the forum. According to him, these are just a drop in the bucket of his lifetime inventions. Looking at the series of strange inventions, Tony felt that his self-esteem had been hit. Although the other party seemed very unreasonable, the self-proclaimed genius still couldn't help but suffer a big blow in the face of that brilliant achievement. Speaking of which, as a scientist, he was still very proud of himself as a scientist selected by the All Heaven Scientists Forum. However, after seeing the scientists in the forum who made him feel ashamed, Tony suddenly realized that he seemed to have there are no inventions born from his own hands. The only thing worth mentioning is his steel battle suit, micro-arc reactor and artificial intelligence. Apart from these, he is designing various weapons, but those weapons cannot be said to be innovative, at most they can be regarded as optimization of energy utilization. Look at the list of achievements of want to eat sheep. These are just some of his many inventions. What about him? After struggling to turn off the want to eat sheep list, Tony finally understood that he still had a lot of room for improvement. At this moment, the man who was a little anxious because he knew more unexpectedly calmed down. After his mood calmed down, Tony was able to analyze the information obtained from the Scientists Forum in a more rational manner. There are so many worlds in the world, and the probability of Dr. Gero coming to our world is obviously as low as 0. Moreover, based on what Dr. Gero has done, he will definitely not treat a little person like me interested in. Since he is running around in various worlds, he must increase his strength. As for Dr. Gro, he can make himself stronger by integrating other strong people, so the only ones that can attract him are those who are truly powerful. There should not be such a strong person on Earth. The information says that Dr. Gro is a multi-level existence, which means there should be a hierarchy to distinguish powers. Multi-universe, I guess, should be multi-universe. This kind of information should be able to be found in the forum. There is also the God of the Heavens. I don't know if there is any information about this person in the forum. Moreover, we need to know more about the other forces in the heavens. As he spoke, Tony continued to think and sift through the forum information, and soon he got the answer he wanted. Dividing the levels of power in the world. Personal power, the methods of obtaining power in each world are different, and the difficulty is extremely different. Therefore, the division based on the realm of cultivation is very narrow. Therefore, the standard for dividing personal power is destructive power. However, the rules of each world are different, and the expression of destructive power also has huge amounts of differences, so the general classification of power levels is not the truth, so please do not believe it blindly. Seeing this introduction, Tony had to nod in agreement. It was indeed true. The gap between worlds was very huge. Maybe the planet in this world could be destroyed easily, but the planet in another world was indestructible. Under such circumstances, there are obviously huge errors and misunderstandings in judging power levels based solely on destructive power. However, it is also very good to serve as a reference. At least it can let people know what level of power they currently have. However, personal power. So, it is actually the division of extraordinary individuals, not the division of collective civilization. It seems that there should be a big difference between the two. Through the expression of destructive power, the power levels are divided as follows. Individual level power within the universe to which the individual belongs: mountains, seas, stars. Mountain can break mountains with one blow. Sea can turn the ocean upside down with one blow. Star can smash a planet with one blow. Multiple levels able to transcend the scope of the universe to which the individual belongs: stars, universe, and heavens. Stars can destroy any star in the universe with one strike. Universe can destroy the universe originally with one strike. Heavens can destroy multiple universes. Without too much explanation, Tony could feel the terrifying power possessed by those unimaginable strong men just by looking at these words. What a simple and crude division. Tony sighed, finally having a clearer understanding of Dr. Gero, but it is this simple and crude division that can be used in all different worlds, because destruction is the most intuitive. Tony also understands what level multi-unit is. Although multi-unit seems to be much stronger than monomer in terms of power division, in fact, there is only one difference between multi-unit and monomer, and that is whether it can transcend personal affiliation. The scope of the universe. As long as it can transcend the personal universe, it is a multi-level existence. On the contrary, no matter how powerful the existence is, when it cannot transcend the personal universe, the limit of what it can achieve will never break through the limitations of the personal universe. And once he breaks his personal universe, he will also enter the multidimensional level. There is no such thing as entering a multidimensional level without transcending the universe to which one belongs. However, looking at the comments under this post compared with the excitement of other posts, it is obvious that for the users of the Zudian Scientists Forum, they do not care at all about this division of personal power. What they care more about is the division of personal power. The pursuit of science, the pursuit of truth. It's okay anyway. Let's see how the forces are divided. When Tony saw the division of forces, he was even more speechless. There are only two levels, single level and multi-level. Isn't there any subdivision? At least it's like personal power. It's a pity that Tony read countless comments and related posts below. Although some people made related suggestions, they were quickly convinced by more people. Power is originally a social relationship composed of life. Originally, there is no hierarchy. They are essentially the same thing, and there is nothing to divide at all. Instead of thinking about such boring topics, it is better to focus on research. Wind of disaster. Yes, even these two divisions are not based on the fundamental division of power, but on the radiation range of power. I'm just a fat nerd. Is there really nothing to do? Isn't this division detailed enough? You cannot break away from the limitations of the world, and you will always be trapped in the world. Without the limitations of the world, you can radiate as much as you want. That's a simple enough explanation. I want to invent a time machine. I can understand this idea, but I need to be reminded that what you think of as segmentation is actually a perception of strength. For forces originally, there is no strength, only structure. The glory of the Qin dynasty shines in the heavens. Oh, if a professional can answer it, then it will be fine and you can disband. How could someone ask such a meaningless question? Is he really a scientist? Guess which world I am the Einstein of. Looking at these discussions, especially the unabashed disdain, Tony also felt a little ashamed. Indeed, for power, originally, it is just a social system. There is no so-called power at all, let alone the so-called distinction between high and low points, only whether it is suitable or not. After all, through this forum, Tony has seen many civilizations that have reached the aerospace level, but the social system is still based on slavery. Although Tony thinks this is unreasonable, his reason tells him that unreasonableness is the truest portrayal of reality. However, seeing that Einstein, who spoke with a gun and a stick, was sarcastic again, Tony felt an unknown fire rising from his chest. With a cold snort, Tony closed the post and began to search for information about the gods of the heavens. He also met a few netizens, including the Calamity Wind, who spoke strictly and coldly. Regarding this Calamity Wind, Tony has very good senses and is a person who can communicate. Although Tony felt that this man spoke too formally and did not like topics other than research, but although he mainly focused on biological sciences, he was also good at other subjects. At the same time, he also seems to have done a lot of research on life, history, humanities, etc. Although he has repeatedly said that he has never done relevant research, he is always able to say memorable and profound words. Just like when Tony asked the other party why he embarked on the path of science, the other party responded like this: tangible things will be destroyed sooner or later, but invisible things will last forever. It smells very nihilistic. Tony asked the other party why he wanted to focus on biological science, and the other party replied, "It is for longevity, because living has no meaning, but as long as you live, you can find interesting things, just like you discovered flowers and I discovered you." It sounded like love words, but Tony couldn't help but feel an inexplicable feeling. In conversations like this, Tony talked a lot with the other person. Obviously, many of the words had very ordinary meanings, but when they came out of the other person's mouth, they always had a profound meaning, as if he was communicating with a master of philosophy. It was also through communication with the calamity wind that Tony seemed to have found a powerful psychiatrist. His shoulders, which originally felt heavy, became much more relaxed at the moment, and he even had new ideas. Why should he bear all these responsibilities alone? He is only one person, and he does not have the ability to hold the galaxy in his hands. He is just a scientist wearing a steel battle suit. As a human being, he should unite more forces. Thank you. After communicating with you, I feel much better. Tony thanked him sincerely. Wind of disaster. You must have activated your account not long ago. This is a normal reaction. When people know the higher sky, they are always troubled by being limited by their own self-knowledge. But in fact these are meaningless, because although the sky changes rapidly, the starry sky always remains unchanged. Tony smiled. To be honest, the starry sky is constantly changing, but for people living on Earth, the starry sky is really the same. Therefore, even though Tony had a bad mouth, he did not deliberately try to antagonize him. In his opinion, the other party could be regarded as a friend he had not met yet. After a few more exchanges with the other party, the two parties dispersed. The other party also said that he would introduce some friends to Tony next time. Tony did not refuse. In his opinion, getting to know a few more scientists from other worlds would make him better and stronger. After these few hours of bombardment, Tony also felt mentally exhausted. Therefore, after closing the Zudian Scientists Forum, he quickly lay on the sofa and fell asleep. Until Little Pepper rushed into the house and was about to call Tony when she found that he was already lying on the sofa and fast asleep. If he got closer, he could hear slight snoring, which showed how tired Tony was. Seeing the way the other person's brows were furrowed even though he was sleeping, Little Pepper quietly sat next to Tony, built a jar for him, and then quietly guarded him. In the laboratory, Tony continued to develop the steel battle suit. After visiting the Forum of Scientists in the sky, he got more inspiration, so he needed to design a better steel battle suit. As for the Mark III, it is naturally being produced. After all, he also needs a spare steel battle suit. The rash dismantling of the Mark II previously caused Tony to delay his efforts to stop Obadiah and the Ten Commandments. Help the transaction. Therefore, it is still necessary to prepare for a rainy day, although he is very fond of the new and hates the old. Tony has new ideas for the development of the Mark IV. He wants to design a battle suit with stronger endurance and faster flight. This battle suit does not perform main combat output, but helps him to be able to fight against terrorists around the world as a convenience. Originally, Tony was a little hesitant about the design of the steel battle suit because he was afraid that his body would not be able to withstand the huge amounts of pressure due to the speed. But after publishing several papers, conducting some post-discussions, and gaining knowledge points, Tony finally understood why Einstein said that knowledge points are not difficult for scientists to obtain. Although Tony's level has not yet reached level 2, by searching in level 1 papers, Tony found many solutions to the problem of excessive pressure caused by flying too fast. All solutions can basically be divided into two categories. One is to improve one's physical fitness. It's a pity that Tony understands his body. He is already terminally ill, and Tony is a bit averse to changing his body, so this doesn't work. The second category is a stable living environment. That is to say, a life cycle system is built inside the steel battle suit that can allow him to stably withstand a certain amount of pressure. Although the pressure caused by flying too fast exists objectively, this pressure is weakened through the life cycle system and finally passed to Tony himself. When, there won't be too much load, and it can even be ignored. And this is Tony's choice. However, as a result, the entire structure of the steel battle suit needs to be redesigned, and which life cycle system to use is also a big problem for Tony. However, solving problems is just a choice. Tony is not the kind of indecisive person, so he immediately decided on a plan. That is a substance called deep-sea liquid. This liquid was originally designed to deal with the danger of huge inertial pressure on the human body caused by excessive acceleration during space navigation. However, if it can protect the safety of the human body during space navigation, wouldn't it be more than enough at the flight speed of Tony's steel battle suit? However, what puzzled Tony was why this material used in space navigation was placed in the first category. Although he was confused, Tony had no intention of studying it. As long as he made it and analyzed it, he would be able to get the answer. Fortunately, the materials for making this kind of deep-sea liquid are very common and can be easily found on the Earth, so Tony made it without spending too much effort. Through the detection of deep-sea liquid, Tony finally understood why this substance was only one level, because it could not withstand the acceleration of the speed of light during navigation. However, for Tony, it is a very good thing. His previous design, if he wanted to achieve high speed, or even exceed the speed of sound, he needed to increase the speed little by little, and could not reach the top speed instantly. Now with the deep-sea liquid, he can increase to the highest speed in an instant, which will qualitatively improve the effect of his steel battle suit. Chapter 21. After adding a deep-sea liquid infusion device to the Mark IV, Tony revised the design of the entire steel battle suit. After confirming that the best data had been achieved for the time being, Tony started to have JARVIS start production. It was another fulfilling day. Tony stretched out after coming out of the underground laboratory. Just when he was about to take a break, Agent Phil Coulson had already walked in with someone. Seeing the person coming, Tony looked unsurprised. "I think I need to call the police to arrest you fools who broke into private houses." Phil Coulson had a gentle professional smile on his face. "For work needs, we can also be policemen and call the police to arrest the police." Mr. Stark still has a great sense of humor. TCH. Tony curled his lips. He didn't want to pay attention to these authorized dogs. Looking at the several boxes put down behind Phil Coulson, he asked curiously, "What are those? Why did you throw all the garbage at my house?" Phil Coulson stepped aside and showed all the boxes behind him in front of Tony. "Howard Stark was once one of the founders of our organization. After his death, he left some relics for us to give to his children." With a sharp look in his eyes, Tony instantly changed from cynical to serious. "My father's relics? It seems you have been studying it for a long time." Phil Coulson did not feel the slightest embarrassment. "After all, it involves national defense secrets, so we must be cautious. Since the things have been delivered, we will leave first." With that said, he turned around and prepared to leave. However, before leaving, he seemed to have remembered something and turned back and said, "In the box is a small gift we gave you, Mr. Stark. I hope you will like it. Also, our department passed by after discussion, we abbreviated the name of the department and called it SHIELD, so that it would no longer be long and convoluted." Tony waved his hand and signaled the other person to leave. Now that his mind was attracted by his father's relics, he didn't care what the other person's name was. As for the gift SHIELD gave him, he also didn't take it seriously. After everyone left, Tony knelt down and opened the boxes one by one, and then looked at the contents. The first thing that caught his eye was a metal box with the words, "lithium dioxide," on it. Tony's eyes flashed with solemnity. He thought he had concealed it well, but he didn't expect these people to discover his secret. And he also gave himself the antidote to inhibition. But although he has not considered this thing, through simple calculations, he also knows that if he wants to use this thing, he must at least have special effects before he is really about to die, otherwise using it now will be a dead end. Moreover, through communication with scientists from many other worlds such as Calamity Wind, especially Calamity Wind, the other party, as a professional biological scientist, was very helpful in helping him suppress palladium poisoning. If he hadn't, still he needs the arc reactor to stay alive, and he can almost cure palladium poisoning. Therefore, for him now, this trouble is no longer a problem that bothers him. Therefore, the gift of S.H.I.E.L.D. did not reach Tony's heart. Instead, Tony made him monitor his life and invade his privacy more and more. Feeling angry. Putting S.H.I.E.L.D.'s plans aside, Tony spent the entire afternoon burying himself in his father's belongings. Almost all of Howard Stark's relics are his lifelong research materials. Except for a few photos of him and his family, and some newspapers and periodicals recording major events, everything else is related to research. Among them are the first-generation design drawings of the arc reactor, the cutting-edge design of magnetic levitation, the entire plan for the Stark Industrial Expo, research on increasing the power of various weapons, and so on. These things are no longer very inspiring to Tony today, because many of the above studies are either just prototypes, outdated research, or in the wrong direction. He didn't know what kind of mentality he had. He could clearly tell what these things were at a glance, but he just couldn't bear to continue rummaging around, trying to find something in this pile of things. He took out a few videotapes from the box, then looked through his father's research notebook on magnetic levitation, and went to the screening room to let Jarvis show the contents of these videotapes. While the tape was playing, Tony dismissed his father's whims in the tape and became increasingly bored. At this time, the style of the video suddenly changed. In the office where the Stark Expo map model was placed, he entered the scene as a child and was then driven out by his father. Howard Stark, who was alone in the office, finally revealed his feelings to the camera when he was alone. Because Howard was not good at expressing feelings and was used to cynicism, although Howard had always loved Tony, he always misunderstood Tony awkwardly. When he was alone now, he was finally able to open up, take off his disguise, give up his habits, and reveal his true feelings for his son. "My greatest work has always been. Tony." Tony was stunned as he watched the video go dark. At the moment, he didn't know how to react. He had been fighting against his father all his life, and it wasn't until his father died that he suddenly understood what he had lost. He once thought that his father was only strict with him and wanted him to inherit the Stark name perfectly, but he never knew that he loved him so much. Just when Tony was still immersed in the complete contradiction between his imagination and reality, the voice of Jarvis suddenly rang. "Sir, the latest news is that Mr. Stanny has completed the production of the Iron Overlord, and he is preparing to establish a mass production line for the Iron Overlord with a mysterious man named Centipede." Shocked by this information, Tony immediately suppressed his previous conflicting emotions. Jarvis, has the Mark III feat been manufactured? Jarvis, has been produced, but has not been tested. Tony got up and ran towards the underground laboratory. No need to test. Put it into use now. Although Jarvis stopped him, he was just an intelligent assistant. Under Tony's insistence, he could only obey orders. After wearing the red and gold Mark III, Tony's face was full of solemnity at the moment. Iron Overlord has put aside his original design, and he at the moment does not know what performance Iron Overlord has. However, in order to prevent the mass production of this terrifying weapon from entering the battlefield, he must stop Obadiah's evil plan. Okay. Jarvis. Let's go. At the beach house, Phil Coulson and other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are spreading around to protect Tony from being disturbed. Phil Coulson took a sip of coffee with a satisfied look on his face. There is almost no difference between working like this and going on vacation. However, before he could continue to enjoy it, he heard a whistling wind blowing from the side, blowing the coffee in his hand all over his body. Phil Coulson was stunned for a moment and saw a string of white tail flames left around him. He looked forward along the tail flames and saw a humanoid machine shining in the air, breaking through the sound barrier and disappearing from them. In eyes. Quick, quick, enter the room and see if Mr. Stark is still in there. However, when they rushed into the room in panic and found no sign of Tony, Phil Coulson immediately realized that something was seriously wrong. He quickly called Director Fury. "Director, Mr. Stark has disappeared." At the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Furui's already dark skin turned a few shades darker. After hanging up the phone, he notified the technician below and immediately locked onto Tony's location. When the satellite locked onto Tony's location, technicians immediately analyzed that Tony's target was a foundry in Obadiah located in the suburbs of New York. Director Fury frowned and thought for a moment, and he suddenly realized, Stark has hacked into our system, and he knows the news about Stanny. Quick, inform Agent Chin and rush to the target location immediately. Be sure to ensure Stark's life safety. Clear. While S.H.I.E.L.D. was in a hurry, Tony had already traveled across New York and arrived at an inconspicuous foundry owned by Obadiah. Looking at the desolate and dilapidated scene around him, Tony had to admit that Obadiah had done enough homework to conceal his plans and whereabouts. No one could have imagined that such a desolate place would have an inconspicuous arsenal. After all, there was not even a security guard around. Arriving at the factory gate, Tony hacked into the factory's internal system through JARVIS, and then controlled the door in front of him to slowly open. I walked into the factory cautiously. It was a mess inside, and the dust was so thick that it was impossible to tell that it was still operating at all. Tony has no doubts about this situation. After all, according to the internal layout given by JARVIS, what he sees now is just a disguise, and there are other secret entrances here. Following the route given by JARVIS, Tony quickly walked to a corner. JARVIS, open the door. As soon as he finished speaking, the wall in front of Tony moved part of the way in, and then moved to both sides, revealing an entrance for 3 people to walk side by side. Without hesitation, Tony, a brave man with a high skill level, walked directly into the entrance relying on the protection of his steel battle suit. Going down the hidden stairs next to him, Tony suddenly felt a wave of heat hitting his face. JARVIS, what's going on down there? Sir, there is a device for synthesizing alloy materials below. As the surveillance screen was projected in front of Tony's eyes, he was surprised. Does Obi even have to synthesize basic materials by himself? Does he like to eat alone so much? However, JARVIS gave a different opinion. According to internal information, these synthesized alloys are not ordinary steel, but special alloys that can guide the unknown energy that drives the Iron Overlord. Only then did Tony understand why such a synthesis device was unnecessary. It was for this special alloy material. However, Tony also understood some of the strength of Iron Overlord and its ability to convert energy on alloy materials. Iron Overlord has almost no need for wiring problems. In other words, it can free up a lot of space. With the design of Iron Overlord, it is very tall, has more internal space, and can carry countless weapons. Such a huge amount of war machine was really a war fortress that could move freely. Tony's heart sank for a moment. We can't wait any longer, this place must be destroyed immediately. After making up his mind, Tony quickly activated the flight function of the steel battle suit and quickly flew to the underground secret space. Compared with the desolation above, the space below the factory is very empty. Obadiah actually dug out such a large underground production base without anyone noticing. Moreover, to Tony's surprise, from the internal information that JARVIS had not obtained, most of them were robot-like things doing work in production. As for the real living people, there are almost only a few here and there. JARVIS. I think I'm going to upgrade you when I get back. You didn't even detect such an important thing. JARVIS explained. Sir, the internal information in the factory is divided into 2 systems. The underlying structure of the other system is unknown. It is not like a program system. Moreover, unknown energy is exuded here all the time, blocking my function. Tony frowned at this answer. Okay, it seems we can get something new today. Now, let's do some damage. After that, Tony ignored those robot-like things and flew up, condensing shock beams with his palms. Woo bang! As the blue-white shockwave was shot out, the entire underground factory exploded in an instant with huge amounts of explosions. Boom 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 boom. In the light of the fire, Tony aimed his palm at the innermost Iron Overlord. When he was about to destroy it in one fell swoop, who knew that the Iron Overlord suddenly started to move. Seeing that the situation was not going well, Tony immediately activated the impact beam to blast towards the Iron Overlord. However, Tony's action was too late after all. The Iron Overlord eyes suddenly lit up with purple light. Then, wrapped in the purple unknown energy, Tony's impact beam was blocked by the energy at that location and was not injured. And Iron Overlord. At this time, Obadiah's voice sounded in the Iron Overlord, ha 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 ha. Tony, I didn't expect you to find this place. Obi. Tony suppressed the anger in his heart. You actually betrayed me. In response to Tony's anger, Obadiah laughed disdainfully. Betrayal? No, Tony, it was you who betrayed me first. How could Stark Industries be where it is today without me? But with you in the eyes of father and son, I am just an assistant, a tool that you don't take seriously. So, I did all this to get back everything that belongs to me. Tony could hardly suppress his anger. Obi, do you know what you are talking about? When did my father and I not value you? My father gave you shares in Stark Industries, made you the vice president, and let you manage the company has great power. I have regarded you as my biological uncle since I was a child. I trusted you so much. You betrayed me, betrayed my father, betrayed the trust that Stark gave you. However, Obadiah was unmoved by such words. He controlled the Iron Overlord and rushed toward Tony. A pair of iron fists hit Tony hard with the roaring wind. The punch was as fast as lightning. Tony was caught off guard and received a solid blow from the front. His whole body instantly flew out uncontrollably, smashing a lot of equipment along the way and triggering a series of explosions. Only in my hands can Stark Industry become more and more prosperous. You Starks and your sons will be useless without me. Tony flew out of the fire angrily at the moment, condensing shock beams in his palms, and flew towards the Iron Overlord. Flying in front of Iron Overlord, looking into the opponent's purple eyes, he fired a shock beam directly at Iron Overlord face from close range with his palms. Stop flattering yourself. Without Stark Industries will never be established. Obadiah Stani, without our father and son, you will just be the lost dog of the Stani family and will never achieve anything. As the saying goes, you don't slap someone in the face when you hit someone, and you don't expose someone's shortcomings when you scold someone. Now, Tony had all of them in one moment, allowing Obadiah to break through his defense in an instant. 2 close-range impact beams hit the face. In addition, Iron Overlord had successfully activated, and all the surrounding purple energy was absorbed into Iron Overlord body, so there was no energy protection. Huge amounts of impact caused Iron Overlord huge body to instantly fall back, losing balance and hitting the ground heavily. Tony Stark. Obadiah's eyes were red, and he was so angry that he immediately lost his mind under the erosion of the unknown purple energy around him. Full of shame and anger, he no longer thought about anything else at the moment. He only had one thought at the moment, and that was to kill Tony Stark in front of him. Lying on the ground burning with raging fire, Iron Overlord clenched his right fist, and the purple energy spread out instantly, guiding the surrounding flames to condense on his right fist, and the temperature was getting higher and higher. Jarvis promptly reminded Tony of the temperature of the flame condensed in Iron Overlord right fist, causing Tony to wake up from his anger and quickly prepare to dodge. Go to hell Stark. Iron Overlord flaming fist hit Tony hard on his head. Tony was simply prepared. When the flaming fist started to wave, he had already flown into the air relying on the propulsion device under his feet, avoiding the Iron Overlord fierce attack. It's hard for me to gain an advantage in this enclosed space. Jarvis, get to the ground. After analysis, Tony's agility advantage cannot be used in such a place. Iron Overlord has a power-based design at first glance. Therefore, Tony must create an advantageous environment for himself. Iron Overlord missed the target, and purple energy immediately erupted from his back to generate power and righted him. Tony quickly flew towards the passage he came from with his hands and feet in the shape of a fairy. Seeing this, Obadiah immediately roared, Tony Stark, don't even think about escaping. The Iron Overlord moved his thick legs and chased Tony step by step. Looking back at the Iron Overlord chasing after him in the flames, Tony snorted, just wait. You'll feel better later. In the desolate and silent factory, little birds flew happily around. Suddenly, a red and gold metal man broke through the roof of the factory with an awkward posture and flew into the sky. And on the shabby roof, a sharp mountain of earth suddenly appeared there. Then, a huge robot more than 6 meters tall rushed out of the desolate factory, turning the factory into ruins in an instant. In the sky, Tony stopped flying upside down by relying on the thrusters and floated in the air, looking at the steel battle suit data given by Jarvis. Sir, the overall battle suit is damaged by 30%, and the energy output is reduced by 35%. Tony stared at Iron Overlord below, I know. JARVIS, Iron Overlord just controlled the fire and the earth, right? Yes, sir, Iron Overlord has the ability to control particles through purple energy. According to comparison, sir, the probability of your failure is 73%. Regarding this possibility, Tony's face darkened. Manipulate particles. I don't think so, but it is similar to some kind of magic that can control elements. Well, as a scientist, it seems that magic comes from my mouth. It's too inconsistent, but Obadiah can never control particles. If he had really reached this level, he would have conquered the world long ago. If it were Tony in the past, he would still sneer at magic, but after experiencing so much, especially the vision brought by the Zudian Scientists Forum, and the mystery of Agent Chin, Tony has long known that magic is real. It's just that he doesn't know whether there is magic in his world, but after seeing the power of Agent Chin and the example in front of him, he believes that magic must also exist in his world. Maybe we should build an anti-magic armor so that we won't be as passive as we are now when facing these enemies in the future. JARVIS, add this plan to the memo. JARVIS, already added to your personal plans. JARVIS, what other magical means do you think Iron Overlord has? JARVIS, according to the magic records circulating on the internet, in addition to fire and earth, it should also be able to master the 3 elements of water, thunder and lightning, and nature. But it does not rule out the ability to control the mind, as well as the ability to space and time. Regarding this outrageous speculation, Tony immediately said, remove the last 3, add these 5 natural elements to the record, and prepare a response plan. Understood, the simulation is in progress. Tony turned over and dived towards the Iron Overlord on the ground. It's time for a fair boxing match. Due to the fall and the momentum of the propeller, Tony was moving very fast at the moment. If it weren't for the acceleration process, Tony would probably be unable to withstand the pressure of instantaneous acceleration. But even so, it was the first time he experienced such an extremely fast speed in a very short time. The pressure still caused him to feel short of breath and the bones all over his body creaked. Although the cushioning material used inside the steel battle suit was specially made by Tony, the pressure brought by this rapid acceleration is still too much. A punch from the sky landed hard on the Iron Overlord face. This move was at full strength. When the fist landed on Iron Overlord face, huge amounts of force directly dented part of Iron Overlord face. At the same time, the huge aftermath of this move instantly dispersed in all directions. Wherever the aftermath passes, no building can escape the danger of being destroyed by the impact. The desolate factory at the center of the battle collapsed completely in this blow, and the sharp mountains of earth next to it were shattered to the ground in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding area became a ruin, as if it had been bombarded by missiles, which was shocking. Sweetheart, your armor doesn't seem to be very powerful. Obadiah laughed and mocked. However, although this move looks powerful, for Iron Overlord, the damage is not fatal, and it can even be said to be insignificant. Although the visor was broken, there was no internal damage. At most, Obadiah's observation of the outside world was somewhat damaged, and everything else was still intact. Especially the weapons and equipment that have not been used yet. Tony was a little dissatisfied with this result. He was in great danger for this blow. After all, the impact just now had not strengthened the protection of his limbs. I'm afraid Tony's arms would not have been saved. However, Tony was naturally unhappy that his confident attack only caused so little damage. In that case, let you be blind. With determination, Tony immediately attacked the Iron Overlord head with all his strength. Tony didn't know who the idiot's design was. The entire armor's perception system was concentrated on the head. As long as the head was destroyed, then Iron Overlord is just a movable target. Boom, 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 boom. While flying around the Iron Overlord, avoiding the Iron Overlord attack, the impact beams with both hands were constantly blasted towards the Iron Overlord head. Under this uninterrupted attack, the Iron Overlord head became pitted, and the arcana inside the Iron Overlord was Badia's vision began to become less and less comprehensive, and he was a little panicked about this situation for a while. For a time, Iron Overlord no longer hid his attack methods, and constantly ejected weapons, ammunition, and even small missiles from his hands and feet, constantly bombarding Tony with the help of the weapon's own locking system. Facing the overwhelming munitions and missiles, Tony had no choice but to retreat. Constantly flying in the air, or dodging the barrage of fire that shoots into the sky, or launching decoys to detonate the missiles tracking you in advance, or shooting out shock beams to shoot down the missiles that slip through the net. For a moment, it felt like a war was going on over the suburbs of New York. Guns were firing, and the terrifying sounds were transmitted to the edge of New York City close to the suburbs. Countless reporters who received the information rushed here excitedly, and some brave people who wanted to watch the excitement also drove towards here. Although the New York police quickly blocked the road after receiving the news, unfortunately, their actions were still a step too late. At least 300 people had already entered the fighting area. These reporters and the brave ones hid excitedly on the edge of the battle between Obadiah and Tony. They were constantly taking photos and recording videos while slowly approaching the center of the battlefield. They were eager to know about these two machines. What exactly are war machines and who created them? This is big news that can make people famous. Obadiah didn't know that anyone was approaching. After all, his entire perception system had become topsy-turvy under Tony's intense attention. He was thankful that he could still see part of the scene outside. Moreover, as a cold-blooded capitalist, he does not care about the life or death of these reporters. Even if he knew about the existence of these reporters, he would probably threaten their lives to make Tony surrender, and then defeat Tony in front of everyone, so as to promote his Iron Overlord and sell it at a good price. Tony, who had just escaped from danger, was about to attack Iron Overlord again when Jarvis suddenly reminded him. "Sir, there are a lot of reporters around." Looking at the zoomed-in screen that popped up in front of him, and looking at the people holding reporters' guns and cannons, Tony was furious. Are these fools desperate for their lives? Without thinking much, Tony immediately flew over these people and stopped them from moving forward. "You people, stop. It's too dangerous here, leave quickly." However, it was better that Tony didn't speak. As soon as he spoke, these people immediately became more excited. "Stark, it's Tony Stark. Oh my God, Mr. Stark actually created such a terrifying war weapon." After everyone was shocked for a moment, they immediately gathered around Tony and stretched out their recording equipment. "Mr. Stark, are you experimenting with new weapons here? Mr. Stark, is the robot over there also your invention? Mr. Stark, you shut down the weapons department, but created new weapons. Does this mean that your initial announcement was just a show? Mr. Stark." Fortunately, Tony was flying in the air, otherwise he would have been surrounded by everyone at this moment. But at this moment, the names everyone called him made him suddenly realize that he didn't seem to be making any disguise, but fortunately his face was blocked, so they could only guess about his identity. "Get out of here. It's very dangerous here. This is not a weapons experiment, but a real battle." However, for these reporters who risked their lives for fame and wealth, Tony's words could only arouse their enthusiasm, so more questions were asked, making Tony miserable. At this time, Obadiah finally noticed the commotion here. He laughed and rushed towards this side. "You little bugs have created a good opportunity for me." Hearing the Iron Overlord voice, the reporters immediately turned their heads to look, only to see a huge amount of steel creation rushing towards them without any sign of slowing down. This made their faces full of horror and screaming. They were running for their lives in all directions, as if the next moment they would be turned into minced meat by the impact of huge amounts of. When life is really threatened, all the greed brought about by fame and fortune disappears, leaving only the desire and nostalgia for life. Tony cursed in frustration, then turned around and rushed towards Iron Overlord. He had to block Iron Overlord impact, otherwise these desperate reporters would really die. "I knew you would rush out to protect these little bugs. Ha 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 ha." With a cheerful smile, Iron Overlord punched Tony in front of him, and terrifying lightning bolts condensed on his fist and exploded in the air. "Go to hell." The fierce punch that caused Gang Feng landed hard on Tony's chest. The violent impact was centered on the point of contact and sent out a powerful shockwave to all surroundings. What is unbelievable is that even though it was a heavy punch, the lightning around the fist was like a magnet and just stuck to Tony. The Iron Overlord also took advantage of the situation and locked him tightly in his arms, preventing him from escaping. At the same time, stronger lightning burst out and jumped towards Tony. Affected by the shockwave, the surrounding ruins were once again lifted into the air, and the reporters who originally surrounded Tony also screamed and flew out in all directions at the moment. When they hit the ground hard, all the machines in their hands were shattered on the ground, and most of them vomited blood, struggled and wailed. There were even people who were originally weak. At the moment, they were breathing more and less. In order to make a name for themselves, they risked their lives for nothing. At the moment, they really felt the threat of death and saw the scythe wielded by the death god. In an instant, everyone was filled with regret. Why did they come to this place? At the same time, there are also some people with dark minds who blame Iron Overlord and Tony, because in their opinion, if there had not been a fight between them, he would not be here, let alone end up like this. As for their own problems, I'm sorry, they can't see them or admit them. Maybe even Tony himself had no idea at this moment that among the people he saved after enduring life-threatening danger, there would be such angry people with him. At the moment, he was suffering from the pain of electric shock. Although Iron Overlord Punch did a lot of damage to Tony, but with the buffer of the steel battle suit, Tony only suffered superficial injuries. What really hurt him was those lightning bolts. It is obviously lightning, but it cannot be absorbed by the steel battle suit, because through the analysis of JARVIS, although these lightnings have electrical energy, they also have the lightning transformed by the mysterious purple energy. The lightning transformed by this energy cannot be absorbed by the steel battle suit, and even the steel battle suit cannot resist the erosion of this lightning, which can reach Tony himself inside. Ah. Tony felt the taste of electric torture at this moment, which made him miserable. JARVIS, activate the thrusters with all your strength and get out of his attack range. The reporters around him have been blown away, and Tony doesn't need to protect them for the time being. After all, the impact just now, even if he doesn't die, is still a serious injury. Without worries, Tony can once again use his methods to gain an advantage. Therefore, Tony was ready to leave immediately. Under Tony's command, JARVIS immediately activated its thrusters with all its strength and continued to output energy. As Tony screamed in pain, the propulsion devices of both hands and feet were already suitable for transportation. Ha, little Tony, don't waste your efforts, give your life and make your final contribution to my uncle. While the Iron Overlord was bursting with lightning, he was tightening Tony tighter and tighter. JARVIS. Hurry, Tony urged anxiously, but unfortunately, his Mark III was still far behind compared to Iron Overlord. Under the mysterious purple energy, Iron Overlord's statistics were extremely exaggerated, and it was not at all like the iron battle that Tony had. Suit is comparable, maybe the Mark IV being produced can be a fighting force. But the completion of the Mark IV inches will take time. After all, the design has just been completed. Even if Tony designed a special assembly line to make the steel battle suit faster, it would still take at least 2 days. Therefore, at this moment, Tony was really in a desperate situation. Although he still had one move that he had not used yet, this move was too powerful. If it hit the Iron Overlord at close range, Tony himself might not be able to escape death. As JARVIS constantly reported the damage to the steel battle suit, Tony became more and more anxious, constantly thinking about how to escape from this dangerous situation. However, no matter what he said, Obadiah had no hesitation at all. He just wanted to kill Tony and get rid of this stumbling block in front of him. After refusing to listen to his advice for a long time, Tony also decided, okay, since you want my life, then let's all die together. JARVIS, focus the energy on the chest blaster. JARVIS dissuaded. Sir, if you hit the target at such a close range, even you will not be spared. Tony roared firmly. I understand. But there is no other way now. Do as I say. Yes. Just when Tony was about to make a decision, a familiar voice suddenly rang in his ears. Little Popsicle Fairy, you gave up so soon. Huh. Tony was stunned for a moment, and then he was extremely surprised. Agent Chin. Hearing 2 almost connected whistling sounds, Tony immediately felt the pressure around him disappear instantly, and the lightning around him also flickered twice and disappeared. Boom. Tony fell to the ground in an instant, half kneeling on the ground in the posture of a hero landing, breathing heavily to calm down the pain caused by the pain. JARVIS, stop and focus. That's already been done. Tony was sweating profusely at the moment and was not in the mood to complain anymore. He just maintained this position quietly to restore his strength. Little popsicle fairy, are you going to die so soon? Are you still a man? Hearing Agent Chin's unique funny voice, Tony couldn't help showing a relaxed smile, and stood up with force. As a man, it's impossible not to be good. For me, even more so. Turning around and seeing the square face and red nose, the face that originally looked extremely funny, at the moment, filled Tony's heart with a sense of security. This is a terrifying existence that can break through Mach 2 with its physical body. Tony looked at the Iron Overlord in front of him who had lost both arms, and was extremely surprised. Why did you suddenly come here? Agent Chin crossed his hands and said, you invaded SHIELD's system, so the director guessed that you would come to trouble this big guy, so let me help you. Tony nodded, that's it, but he suddenly reacted, you should have arrived a long time ago, right? With your speed, it's impossible to arrive now. In response, Agent Chin picked his nose and said, that's definitely not the case. How could I be so worthless? I met a few kiddies on the way here and had a fight with them. Only then did I realize that they were also here for this big guy, so we've just arrived. Hearing Agent Chin's words, Tony was greatly surprised. In his eyes, Agent Chin's strength was comparable to Superman. If divided according to the strength levels he just learned about, Agent Chin could not be said to be at least mountain level strong. By being able to destroy a mountain range with one strike is something that most modern weapons cannot do. Can anyone hold you back? Regarding Tony's question, Agent Chin said without hesitation, those brats definitely can't hold me back. Although they have some abilities, that's all. I just want to see what kind of methods they have to kill me. Boring. Speaking of the latter part, Agent Chin's voice became softer and softer because he suddenly felt resentment coming from beside him. Sure enough, Tony's gloomy voice sounded, yeah, boring Mr. Steve Joker, your mission is to support me, right? Let the mission target be killed and just entertain yourself. This salary is really easy to get, right? Ah ha 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 ha. After laughing twice, Agent Chin changed the topic, look. Those brats are here. I said they were related to the person named Baizu, so I tested it and found out the power they used very similar. HMPH. Tony felt unhappy, but at the moment was not the time to dwell on the responsibility. After all, no matter what, the other party showed up at the critical moment and saved his life. Looking at the Iron Overlord in front, I saw that at some point, two teams of people who were obviously not in the same group stood on the left and right of the Iron Overlord, surrounding it. Although these two groups of people look like they are not from the same place, they give people the strange feeling of coming from the same place. The team on the left has 4 people of different heights, fat and thin, all wearing masks to hide their faces. Among them, the yellow-haired man in the owl mask is obviously the leader. After he made a few gestures, the other 3 people immediately cooperated with him, stretched out his hand and took out his weapon, ready to attack. The team on the right consisted of 2 men and 1 woman, 1 adult and 2 boys and girls. They did not wear masks, but wore forehead protectors engraved with swirling patterns. After seeing the movement on the other side, the adult man wearing a green vest immediately shouted to the 2 people around him, "Be careful. The other side is ready to take action." Upon hearing this, the 3 of them immediately became vigilant and prepared for battle. Tony looked at this scene and asked Agent Chin in surprise, "Aren't they in the same group?" Agent Chin spread his hands. "No, but the abilities of these little guys are pretty good. The methods they use are a bit like the ninjas from Japan, but judging from their costumes, they should be ninjas." Tony thought of those masked men in movies and TV shows, carrying daggers on their backs. Their expressions were full of weirdness. They were different from the ninjas he imagined. Moreover, what made him a little concerned was Agent Chin's name for Japan, Japan. This is a very old name, right? What is the origin of Agent Chin? While the 2 were watching the fun, the masked ninjas immediately started to take action. Although there is a man next to him who is extremely powerful, but after just fighting with him, he learned that his goal is almost the same as theirs, so there is no need to worry about the other party taking action against them for the time being. As for the 3 ninjas on the opposite side, you can tell where they come from their forehead protectors, but the situation is a bit beyond imagination, so you just need to pay a little attention. In general, they can freely dismantle the puppet in front of them and get the information they want from the mind of the puppet master inside. The Iron Overlord was stared at by several masked men. Although he lost his arms, Obadiah was never one to sit still and wait to be killed. I haven't failed yet. With a roar, Iron Overlord suddenly stretched out several purple energy threads from the broken arm, connected the broken arm on the ground, and then shrank back. Do it. Seeing Iron Overlord trying to retract his arm, the yellow-haired masked ninja suddenly shouted, and his companions around him immediately started taking action. The obese ninja took the lead and punched directly. The terrifying force instantly smashed the Iron Overlord into the ground. Obadiah felt the vibration above his head and let out a cry of pain. Because of Tony's focus, the protection on his head was already in danger, so this vibration almost gave him a concussion. However, with perseverance, he still insisted on retracting his arm, and at the same time activated various mechanisms on his body, firing countless bullets towards the surroundings. The terrifying barrage raged around, turning everything it reached into powder. Get away! Faced with this terrifying attack, the two teams of ninjas immediately dodged away. The fat ninja closest to the Iron Overlord suddenly expanded his arms and then blocked them in front of him. The wrist guards where the bullets landed on his arms splashed countless sparks. When Tony was just about to dodge, Agent Chin had already waved his hand and placed a transparent barrier in front of the two of them. The ferocious barrage landed on it as if it had been driven into soft mud, and stopped embedded in it. Tony glanced meaningfully at Agent Chin who was beside him, but his move was very scary. Don't tell me your name is Neo. Agent Chin smiled and replied, why, do you want to take the red pill or the blue pill? Tony, why not choose them all? I must control the Matrix, so that the whole world is mine. Agent Chin turned to look at him with a smile. I didn't expect you to have such ambitions. I really underestimate you. Tony joked. At that time, I will be able to make myself the only man in the world. The two were chatting and laughing here, but the battle there was extremely thrilling. With the cover of the steel barrage, Iron Overlord reattached his arm. After a flash of purple energy, the traces of the break disappeared instantly, and Iron Overlord returned to his original state again. Tony's eyes lit up when he saw this scene. If this was applied to his steel battle suit, how much it would improve him. We must get the formula of this metal and that mysterious purple energy. His arms recovered again, and Obadiah's confidence returned again. He laughed and waved his fists constantly, and scorching flames, thunderbolts and lightning, and impact water constantly emerged around him, forming strong blows. However, to the ninjas, these attacks are just pretty. Relying on their agility, they easily dodged Iron Overlord loophole-laden attacks, and easily landed each of their wonderful attacks on Iron Overlord body, whether it was energy balls, overwhelming insects, or lightning. The steel armor that could have easily withstood Tony's attack at the moment made Iron Overlord extremely vulnerable when faced with an attack of the same nature. Soon, in just 10 seconds, Iron Overlord was dismembered to pieces. The embarrassed Obadiah was lying on the ground covered in scars with a look of disbelief on his face. He had obviously been able to overpower Tony before, so how could he be defeated so easily when facing these mysterious people without any protection? In this regard, Agent Chin said to Tony, this guy doesn't have any combat experience, so he can bully someone like you who also has no combat experience. Facing a warrior who has experienced hundreds of battles, he is just a bigger target. Hearing Agent Chin's words, Tony's face darkened. He could think that since Iron Overlord was a target, why was he not the same? It turns out that fighting is not just about crushing with equipment, but also requires corresponding combat experience, so that you can maximize your combat power. However, Agent Chin's words soon changed Tony's mind, but in the final analysis, Stanny's equipment is better than yours this time, so even if you have a smart assistant to assist you in fighting, it can still suppress you. Let you do this. A scientist is obviously forced to fight, so you can perfect an intelligent assistant to assist in combat, so that the combat experience is just a calculation for you. Tony thought seriously for a moment and determined that this kind of thing was actually not difficult. He just needed to add a combat learning module to JARVIS. Sure enough, scientists should use their scientific thinking to fill in the gaps. Thank you. Tony thanked Agent Chin awkwardly. If Agent Chin hadn't helped him several times, he wouldn't have said thank you. Agent Chin turned around and smiled. It doesn't matter, you can think of this even if I don't say it. While the two were talking, the masked ninjas had tied up Obadiah and were questioning him. Tell us, where is Bezu? The yellow-haired masked ninja asked in a low voice. However, in response to this question, Obadiah snorted coldly, Who are you? How dare you kidnap me? Do you know who you are provoking? The yellow-haired ninja was unmoved by this threat. The Bezu you are cooperating with is a traitor on our side. Do you know who you are cooperating with? Obadiah's pupils trembled. He was afraid of Bezu's mystery and power, so after cooperating with the other party, he quietly built his own arsenal here, but the other party later discovered it but ignored it. This allowed him to quickly complete the development of Iron Overlord. Such a terrifying existence turned out to be the traitor in the eyes of these people. What kind of force are they? Yes, they also have the ability to control elements. It can only be related to Centipede. This fool got him into such huge trouble. Hey, you idiot, tell me the whereabouts of Bezu. That idiot has committed a big crime. Seeing that Obadiah was still hesitating, the yellow-haired boy on the other side suddenly shouted angrily. Naruto. The pink-haired girl on the side reached out and covered the boy's mouth. Don't speak casually at this time. It's very strange here, and the strength of those ninjas cannot be underestimated. We have to be careful. The green-vested ninja helplessly covered his forehead and shook his head, obviously troubled by the behavior of his subordinates. However, what they didn't notice was that after the girl's words came out, the body of the yellow-haired masked ninja opposite him swayed quietly, and then he took a deep look at the boy named Naruto through the mask. Then he no longer paid attention to these, but turned to look at Obadiah, who was completely shaken. As the young man over there said, you are shielding a criminal. If you don't want to be our enemy, please inform us of his whereabouts. As soon as these words came out, the balance in Obadiah's heart had completely tilted, but he was still hesitating. As a capitalist, he was thinking about what kind of benefits he could bring to himself at this time. As for his own safety, he believed that these people would not do anything to him before getting news from Bezu. Not far away, Tony looked at the scene and said to Agent Chin, I bet that the yellow-haired masked ninja is related to that kid named Naruto. In this regard, Agent Chin seemed to be pointing out and said, maybe the two parties are father and son. Tony was speechless. Stop joking, okay. Whether the age difference between the two is 10 years or not is a problem. How can they be father and son? It's better to say that they are brothers who have been lost since childhood. Agent Chin smiled and did not refute again. After all, sometimes reality is so magical. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was intentional. There was no concealment in the conversation between the two, so these ninjas could hear it clearly. Naruto squinted his eyes and looked at the yellow-haired masked ninja. The puppet uncle and the square-faced uncle over there are really humorous. They actually said that this little brother and I are father, son and brother, even though I don't even know him. The girl punched Naruto on the head angrily. Don't say such useless words at this time. Please pay attention to the atmosphere here, okay? Distracted by this, Obadiah turned back into the shrewd businessman again, but just when he was about to bargain, the yellow-haired masked ninja suddenly threatened him. If you don't want to tell us, we can also get it from your brain. It's just that I'm a little unskilled in this kind of ninjutsu, and the result may not be good for you. His whole body was shaken, his hair stood on end, and Obadiah's originally pale face instantly turned pale. I say, I'll tell you right now. Afterwards, Obadiah no longer wanted to bargain, and immediately told everyone the information about Bezu. As for why he was so afraid, it was naturally that after seeing Bezu's methods, he had a certain understanding of the methods of these ninjas. This was one of the reasons why he was so afraid of Bezu and wanted to start a new one. Regarding this result, Tony scorned with disdain, Obi is really spineless. Agent Chin smiled and said, maybe it's because Bezu showed him the ninja skills, but this is just right, my mission can be over. During this period, I have dealt with several tasks one after another, and it also interrupted my vacation. I must ask Braised Egg to give me a little more holiday next time. As he spoke, the ninjas jumped and left quickly, and Tony also pulled Agent Chin and flew up. Let's catch up too. After coming out of the police station, Agent Chin and others had been waiting for a long time. How's it going? Did you ask? Naruto asked. Tony raised his eyebrows. What can he hide for the sake of his own life? Where? The yellow-haired masked ninja asked. Tony said seriously, Indiana. I didn't expect it to be hidden so far away. The yellow-haired masked ninja said, my partners are already heading over there. I think they will have results soon, so I need to support them now. Let's go too. Naruto stood up without hesitation. I promised Sarah that I would defeat this fool. Let Lulin become peaceful. The green vest ninja Yamato also said, it is also our mission to capture Beizu. After taking a look at the three people in front of him, the yellow-haired masked ninja nodded. In this case, let's set off for it. It will take some time to find Beizu. We will have a night's rest after we get there. There should be a tough battle tomorrow. Quote. Tony said not to be outdone. Since the battle starts tomorrow, I will come back to support you. Naruto openly doubted Tony's strength. Uncle Puppet, your puppet has been beaten to pieces, but it still has fighting ability. And your strength is not even comparable to that of a child. Tony's eyes twitched wildly. Kid, first of all, my steel battle suit is not a puppet, and secondly, I have a more powerful steel battle suit. Also, what you said is so unpleasant. However, Naruto just smiled at Tony's embarrassment and didn't take it to heart at all. He could feel that the uncle in front of him was a good person. Agent Chin clapped his hands and attracted everyone's attention. Okay, the matter has been decided, then everyone can act on their own. After everyone dispersed, Agent Chin stayed and looked at Tony. I think you'd better think about it carefully. After all, Beizu is obviously not comparable to Stani. Tony shook his head and said, Agent Chin, I need to know what this world is really like, and I need to understand what I can achieve. Agent Chin continued to persuade. This is not your responsibility. Tony interrupted Agent Chin's words. No need to persuade me anymore, Chin. I have my own reasons. I must strengthen myself as soon as possible. Agent Chin took a deep look at Tony, and when he met his firm eyes, he let out a long sigh. Okay, people like you are so stubborn. You always take all the responsibility on yourself, leaving a mess in the end. Let us friends solve it. Really, why do I always make friends like you? Thank you. Tony expressed his sincere thanks for Agent Chin's understanding and his attitude of not asking for answers. However, he suddenly became interested in the friends mentioned by Agent Chin. Who are those friends you mentioned? Agent Phil Coulson doesn't look like this kind of person. Agent Chin said meaningfully. He is a hard worker who takes world peace and world harmony as his own mission. Saying goodbye to Agent Chin, Tony returned to his beachside villa under the protection of Agent Shield. Tony didn't mind that there were twice as many agents outside. After all, with his steel battle suit, he could go where he wanted to go at any time. Phil Coulson came to Tony with a look of helplessness. Mr. Stark, I hope you can inform us in advance next time you go out to play. The commotion caused today is really big. You should be very proud to be in the headlines again. Quote. Tony said. It's all just speculation, isn't it? After all, they haven't shown their faces, it's just the speculation of some reporters. In order to make the news explosive, haven't they done a lot of fraud? Phil Coulson reminded. Although having a big toy is very exciting and wants to show off, at least the movement can be made smaller, so that our work can be easier. Tony looked like he was seeing off a guest. Okay, I'll try my best. By the way, let me tell you, I'm going to Indiana tomorrow. I think Agent Chin has already informed you. Phil Coulson said helplessly. Yes, Agent Chin is more responsible than you. He notified the director immediately and our people are rushing over there. By the way, I will be transferred to work elsewhere soon. So, Agent Chin will take over my job next. Tony nodded. I know, where did something strange happen again? Phil Coulson didn't hide it, or S.H.I.E.L.D. intended to involve Tony. A hammer fell from the sky in New Mexico, and the director asked me to go over there and take charge of the overall situation. Tony's expression paused. Huh. Hammer. Your S.H.I.E.L.D.'s funds are so tight that you would go to great lengths just for a hammer. Definitely. Having said that, Tony still understood that a hammer worthy of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s treatment was definitely not a simple thing, so his curiosity was successfully aroused. However, there were still important things on his mind at the moment, so he could only suppress his curiosity and wait until he finished dealing with Baidu's matter before going to New Mexico to see the situation. On the second day, after Tony had a good rest, he equipped the completed Mark 4 inches and then flew towards Indiana with the agent. Noticing that Tony was able to enter supersonic flight instantly, Agent Chin was very curious. What kind of black technology did you add to allow you to withstand such pressure? Tony at the moment was wrapped in deep-sea liquid. This magical liquid made him like a sea creature, able to breathe freely and speak easily. Except for the fact that he needed to get used to fighting, he didn't feel any discomfort at all. I made some small changes and added some new things to offset the strong pressure of instant acceleration. Agent Chin thought thoughtfully. The military will be very jealous if they find out about this kind of thing, and the director may also want to pay the same attention, so you'd better be careful and don't leak it casually. He felt very warm about Agent Chin's concern in his heart, but he still asked too much. Aren't you also a SHIELD agent? Why would you remind me of this? Agent Chin replied. I only get paid. SHIELD is not my family. Why should I harm the interests of my friends to satisfy the interests of SHIELD? I haven't even found a capitalist like Director Luden who squeezes employees. It's like canceling my vacation. Tony laughed. Then you can resign from SHIELD, come work for me and be my bodyguard, and the money will be guaranteed. How about that? Forget it. It's okay to be friends, but if I become your bodyguard, it won't be easy to be your friend. While joking, the two had arrived in Warren County, Indiana, and the ninjas had gathered in front of a cave at the moment. Naruto on the ground saw Tony and Agent Chin arriving, and he immediately surrounded Tony excitedly. Wow, I didn't expect Uncle Puppet to actually have a new puppet. It looks really cool. Chirping, satisfying Tony's vanity. The SHIELD agents who were on alert around them immediately stepped forward to report the situation when they saw Agent Chin's arrival. After getting the corresponding information, Agent Chin asked these people to stay away from here and sealed off the surrounding area to prevent reporters from rushing in like yesterday. Then, Agent Chin took a tablet and placed it among everyone. This is the information our people have received. The underground base Bezu created through the combination of your chakra and our technology is full of dangers, and he seems to be very confident in his design, so he did not leave as we thought. It is very difficult for yours to successfully pass these obstacles, so we must work together this time. No one can hold anyone back. No matter what ideas we have between us, after thorough before defeating Bezu, we must give each other our backs. With Bezu's position determined, although they have the same goal for the time being, they still have big differences over Bezu's ownership. Therefore, Agent Chin deliberately stated this point in advance in order to prevent Bezu from getting into chaos because of mutual suspicion before the problem of Bezu was solved, and ultimately failed. Naruto patted his chest. No problem. We agree to this. However, his words were not recognized by everyone. Others looked at Yamato. After all, he was the captain of their team. Yamato looked thoughtfully at the silver-haired masked kid next to him. I want to know if his name is Hatake Kakashi. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the venue instantly cooled down. The masked ninjas didn't react at all, but the next moment, Naruto and Sakura shouted in shock and looked at the white-haired masked kid, Kakashi-sensei. The yellow-haired masked ninja took off his mask, and the others followed suit. It was still discovered. Looking at the familiar face, Naruto and Sakura took a closer look, but it looks a lot like Kakashi-sensei. Could it be Kakashi-sensei's child? They are also Konoha ninjas. Little Kakashi said with disdain. You are so stupid for a big subordinate like you. It's already so obvious and you haven't noticed it yet. Yamato punched little Kakashi on the head with a wicked smile. I've wanted to do this for a long time. The little Kakashi was in pain and covered his head. Asshole. I must kill you. Seeing that both sides had the same power mark, Agent Chin said to Tony, how about it? I said it as father and son, right? Tony looked at Naruto, and then at the shrewd-looking yellow-haired ninja. Although the two had some differences in appearance, they could still see similarities between their eyebrows, and the yellow-haired and blue-eyed features should not be too obvious. It's incredible, it's time travel. Can a ninja still do this? At this time, Naruto and Sakura also saw other acquaintances, pointed at the fat ninja and said in surprise, huh. It's Choji's dad. Akamichi Dingzao had a simple and honest smile on his face. Oh. Is my child's name Dingji? It seems that you are still friends. Huh, what is Uncle Chozu talking about? Why doesn't he even recognize Choji anymore? Kakashi said disgustedly. You haven't realized it yet. You traveled through time and met people from the past. Naruto and Sakura were instantly shocked. The yellow-haired ninja stood up. Let me explain. The time we are in should be more than 20 years different from Naruto's time. At the same time, we should no longer be in the original ninja world, but have come to an unknown world, in the world. Tony was stunned for a moment. Wait. Are you not from our Earth? The yellow-haired ninja replied. The world we live in is called the ninja world, not the Earth. Although we also call the planet we live on the Earth, the more customary name is the ninja world. Naruto and Sakura finally reacted at this time. So, we not only traveled through time, but also across the world. Naruto covered his head in great pain. If I can't go back, then won't I never be able to eat Ichiraku ramen again? Will I never be able to return to Konoha? Sakura collapsed weakly on the ground. My parents. I won't be able to see them either. Regarding the performance of the two people, Yamato covered his face and looked like he couldn't see anyone, but he quickly comforted them. The yellow-haired ninja was not disturbed and continued. You don't have to worry at all. Although we don't know how Beizu brought us to this world, as long as we defeat him, we can get a way back. As for traveling through time, it should be the energy of the dragon vein affects time and space. As long as the dragon vein is sealed, you will also return to your own era. Tony's mind was buzzing. Not long ago, he was worried about whether people from other worlds would come to this world, even terrifying beings like Dr. Gero. But he collected a lot of information, and there was nothing suspicious about it, so he felt a little relaxed for a while, thinking that this kind of thing should not happen. But he never thought, how long has it been? Just to deal with Obadiah Stane, he actually involved the existence of other worlds, and time travel actually happened in this ninja world. The two things were connected together, and Tony felt that his brain was a little down for a moment. His originally peaceful attitude suddenly became anxious. After all, the first time travel incident happened, so the second and third incidents were naturally not impossible. However, he is not ready for these things to happen yet. Can the Earth withstand the occurrence and destruction of these things? At this time, he was suddenly tapped on the shoulder. He turned around and saw Agent Chin with an indifferent expression. Don't worry too much. You know too little about this world. You are just a stranger. Earth, we've already been invaded by aliens, so it's not that hard to accept. Aliens. Invasion. Tony felt that his worldview had been greatly affected. The Earth had been invaded by aliens. Agent Chin said such a major matter in such an understatement. Moreover, when did this all happen? How come he didn't know about it at all? Is there anything else he doesn't know? This Earth is so strange. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.